right, welcome everybody to the August 28th, 2012 Shakopee City Council Budget Meeting. Kim, could you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Counselor Sherman?
Here.
Counselor Lehman?
Here.
Counselor Clay?
Here.
Counselor Whiting?
Here.
Mayor Tapke?
Here. Item number 2, approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions or corrections?
Mr. Mayor, other than just the additional debt discussion in item number 4, no.
Anything from Councilor Whiting?
I'll move to approve the agenda with the addition.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilor Sherman. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. Item number 3A, revenues and expenditures.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, city staff in the audience, and viewing public. As you're aware, this is the final meeting in the budget work session series. Before we discuss the, okay. All right, hang on one second. Tell me which one. It's not coming on.
You gotta tell it which device
Oh,
you
sure
want
you do.
first.
Okay, let me see here. Final work session discussion regarding several topics and discussion pieces that the city has had regarding the 2013 preliminary budget and preliminary levy. As we've worked through a number of different scenarios related to the budget, we're dealing with issues that most cities are confounded and dealing with at the same time. Declining property values, increasing property levies, limited increases in fees and charges, changes to intergovernmental revenues. What we've prepared and discussed in past sessions has been a budget prepared for 2013 that shows a slight increase in general fund revenues. Those are primarily coming from charges and services and some slight increases in the areas of general fund property tax categories such as delinquent taxes, some of the areas of fiscal disparities, et cetera, et cetera. Minimal increases, not what I would call a lot of dollars for you to work from. We are also looking at transfers from the funds that provides some resources to the city from the stormwater and the sewer fund, and that's to the tune of $100,000, bringing your total revenues of revenues and transfers to $20,655,000. The expenditures that we've discussed for the 2013 budget come in the primary categories of general government, which consist of the areas of mayor, council, finance, elections, those primary areas, including planning, zoning, inspections, and economic development and community development. Public safety, which is one of your major categories. That includes police, fire. Public works, consisting of engineering, public works, streets. Parks and recreation, which is the area that is maintained for your areas such as the Sand Venture Water Park, the programs through recreation, etc. And then the unallocated funds, which we have put aside for areas such as unforeseen needs. The transfers that are discussed, and we've had several discussions, but will be a topic for this evening, would be the proposed transfers for 2013. The first one being a transfer to the EDA, $150,000. This floats back to the projects and discussions relating to the facade loan program. The other transfer out is to the Capital Project Fund, which is in line with the CIF discussions that were held in July with the engineering department. And what we've requested for an initial transfer to fund the activities planned is $500,000. As you recall, this has been a fund that has not historically been provided with a consistent revenue source. There are transfers in from time to time and there are underspends. We thought it was very critical this year to bring forth a number that will initiate the fund transfers to keep this fund going strong. As you're aware, when they talk the 5-year plan, there are several projects that are facing this community in future years that are going to require significant funding, and we feel it's very important. The other area, as we get into some longer-term discussion with the city and future funding needs, are the area of debt service and debt repayment. As you recall, in one of the previous budget work sessions, the city has not historically had a specific standalone levy for debt. When we discussed the 2013 budget, staff has recommended that to begin to bring debt service levy coverage to the budget, that you start with several of the smaller debt pieces, bring them forward for 2013. Again, this is a recommendation. This is something we're putting forward for the council to act on, and these will be areas that we'll be asking for some decisions on. Are there any questions?
Councilor Lehman.
The 500,000 transfer, where is that money coming from?
That is a direct transfer from the general fund, which would be as part of your property tax levy.
Okay. What happens to the underspend?
That again is available for the future needs of the capital improvement fund, because the 500,000 by no means provides for full coverage of the projects in 2013 and 2014.
How much is currently available underspent from?
That is difficult to assess because we haven't even got the full August run in yet. We've just barely got some of the July. I'm going to give you a very rough estimate of 800,000. Very rough, because there are some factors that are coming into play that we just don't know about.
And the 150, don't we levy the EDA separate?
The EDA, and now this is a levy that would be a transfer directly from the general fund to provide for the facade program.
Okay, and then the separate EDA levy is going where?
That's the 80,000, and that is a levy that has been put in place for many, many years relating to your tax abatement.
Well, we put it in an EDA account and it
Correct.
It builds up and builds up,
Correct.
and it's 300,000-400,000
Yes.
now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Or any other items that you would want to discuss or bring forward? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Ooh, I had a question.
We went a little early on that one. You might as well stay up there for the night. Can we get you a microphone down? Or why don't you come sit up here, Julie? I know you don't have to. You look good, though. I just envisioned many questions for you this evening. All right, Councilor Clay, you had a question for Julie.
The debt service payments
Yes, sir. I'm
at-
sorry,
at
what?
the, at the bottom of this
Yes.
sheet, it seems like the debt service issue has kind of been off the radar for the last couple of meetings. And now it's appearing at the bottom of this sheet. Is this 390,299 reflected somewhere higher up on this before, when we get to the net revenues over expenditures?
Well, I think I have to go back historically. Historically, you have not budgeted for specific levies for your debt service. And the one specifically that we talked about is the fired building referendum, which has allowed you the ability to levy the full 250-some thousand. That has been brought down, brought down, brought down. This is a fairly significant change in policy that we would need to get direction from the council, that you wish to go back to levying debt service per issue.
So it-
That's a specific driven tax levy increase.
correct.
In the past, it's primarily been paid out of use of fund balance.
Yeah, which we don't seem to have anymore.
Well, you do have it, but I'm just saying from a policy perspective, when you issue debt, you specifically need to levy for the debt, because that's what you have placed into the hands of the bond buyers. We will levy and pay for the debt. When you do projects, you levy and pay for the debt. That ensures that you have the ability to prepare and do projects.
Got it. Now, my question is, we have the revenue,
Mhm.
we have the expenditures, and then we have budget enhancements, as staff would call it, or additional, budget initiatives, it's
Right.
as stated here.
Right.
So could we consider then this debt service payments recommended to be levied? In a sense, could that also be a line item under budget initiative?
By all means.
I mean, just for my,
Right. Right.
in my simple thinking
I think,
here?
I think that is beyond simple thinking. I think it's very good thinking.
Okay,
She knows the right things to say.
yeah.
Okay.
Always make the council member look like they're not an idiot.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. McNeil.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Since we last met, we have met as staff and looked at the component that we haven't really talked about, and that is terms of where can we cut from the budget, whether it's a service that we've been providing, or whether it's a membership, or anything that, while it's been valuable in the past, it might be a point to relook at everything that we have. We also took the initiatives from you at the last meeting and looked at what those would mean in terms of we add staffing here, would that impact other staff positions? I think it's very important to note, especially one of those, and that would be the transition to starting to become a combination fire department, where it's not just paid on-call volunteers responding, but the fact that we would be adding 4 full-time firefighters. This is something that I know Chief Coleman has looked at with a great deal of introspect and trying to find a way to address the daytime availability. When we looked at that, we started thinking, well, are there things that these new positions would be able to accommodate? For example, the community service officers in the police department, they do our zoning administration, code enforcement, that sort of thing. Would that be something that these positions would do? But we've been trying to tie the type of skills that likely we'd be looking for as a firefighter with the sorts of things that we might be adding. That's one of the components. The other thing, we need to recognize the fact that when you make a transition from an all paid on-call fire department to starting to add full-time, that changes the nature of the department. We want to make sure that that's something that everyone is comfortable with, having looked at all the pluses and minuses of that. What we would suggest is that rather than moving ahead with this right now for next year, that we would suggest that a study commission be put together and look at the issues involved with the fire department, and especially how do you deal with daytime availability. That's the thing that's really moved this. The chief has indicated, we've got about a 15-minute response time at times during the day. Is that acceptable? Is it not acceptable? We also know that Scale has been looking at firefighting, and because they have a lot of the same issues, at least the 3 big cities in the northern part of the county have at least talked about, are there efficiencies that we might do. What we would suggest is that rather than moving ahead and filling those positions now, appoint a commission that would take a look at this. And while it might not be something that we'd be able to do for 2013's budget, that if we could bring this back in June of next year after they have time to, one, work with Scale, and then secondly, to meet and examine all the different alternatives, that you'd be able to hear a recommendation from them in time for the 2014 budget. If it's something that you would be interested in doing, I think we'd probably be looking at perhaps 8 to 10 members. The chief, myself, A couple of members of the department that would be elected, one perhaps the officers and then the firefighters themselves, each choosing someone to serve on this. A couple of community members, maybe a chief from a neighboring town or a former chief here, and take a look at all the things in depth that probably you as a council don't have the time to get involved with. And also, I'm sorry, the two most important perhaps, two members of the current city council, so that we would have the elected officials' point of view on that. If you would be willing to do that, then I think we can move ahead with the recommendations, or at least presentation of what the suggested possible reductions are tonight. Otherwise, if the desire is to move ahead with the 4 full-time positions for the 2013 budget, then that will change somewhat what we have as far as recommendations for the position. Is there any reaction or discussion on that?
So if we set up a committee for this, it would come back to us when, and then it would be whatever the decisions would be talked about us, and then impact for the 2014 budget? Is that what we're?
I think it would be extremely optimistic to think that you'd be able to get it done before the end of this year. Just knowing the fact that Scale's not really started to delve into this, and there's really only about 4 months before you have, 3.5 before you actually have to set your levy for next year.
So when do you think it would come back?
We would aim for June 1st of 2013.
And then decide for the 2014 budget.
You'd have next summer to talk about your 2014 budget.
All right, Councilor Lehman.
I think it's a good idea. The question I have is, we're still looking for additional paid on-call now.
That's one of the initiatives that you talked about.
Okay.
Councilor Clay?
I'm a little bit more than disappointed that this comes out at the last budget discussion that we have as a council. When did this all of a sudden appear on the horizon?
During the last meeting and tonight, I think this was something that we felt needed to be looked at in terms of how this is going to impact the department.
Could I address some questions to the chief?
Sure.
You recall our discussion in the hallway? It remains to be seen what kind of night this is going to be. You sounded fairly confident these past 6 or 7 months, as I recall, that this full duty crew was something that we should do fairly soon. Have you changed your mind, or is this recent change in looking at a commission to study it further, is it more of a budget thing? I'm trying to sense your comfort level without putting you on the spot too much, but then that's why you get paid the big bucks.
Yeah, that's, I'm glad I get paid the big bucks to do this, but, it's still a need out there. It's still something that needs to happen. I guess I need to know what the comfort level of the council is as far as response time to really answer that. If the council's okay with the 15-minute response time, we don't need to meet moving forward any further than what we are.
Well, see, that's the trouble. We're not firefighters. I need somebody like you who is an expert in it to tell me, is 15 minutes something I should be comfortable with, or should I be concerned about that?
I would be concerned about that in my book. It's the best practice is what we discussed last time out of NFP 1720, which is we're an urban area. We have 1,250 people per square mile, which gives us that 15-minute or 15-person response that we need for a working structure fire, and our 9-minute response. That's best practice. NFPA also states that the local jurisdiction can determine what that response time is. You don't have to follow that guideline, but we're trying to meet that guideline.
And Councilor Clay, to take some of the heat off the chief and put it on myself.
I'm not letting you off the hook either, so.
Well,
so you
that's
know.
good. That's what we're here for
All
tonight.
right.
No, after the last couple of meetings, I had asked for ways that we could, opportunities for cutting budget, and for if there were things that were off the table that staff thought we could cut previously, or ideas that hadn't been well received in the past for ways that we could reduce budget from 2012 to 2013. And we didn't get very many of those over the last few budget meetings, and so I've been pushing pretty hard the last couple weeks on Mark and Julie and Chris and staff for coming up with those ideas and bringing them forward, which is how we have this sheet. But some of those ideas for ways that we could save money year over year, that we don't necessarily need to spend the money right now, involving the fire department, caused a rethink, I guess is the best way to put it, in what we're doing with 4 full-time firefighters and the 6 part-time firefighters, and Mark.
I'm starting to wonder now if this suggestion by staff tonight isn't a reaction to your concerns as opposed to the concerns of the rest of the council. And I'm also thinking that when we were sitting at the last budget meeting with the township people talking about fire department expenses and response times, I made a particular point of stressing that, you know, the first few minutes of a acting fire is the most critical to get, you know, a response out there so that you can attack the fire from within the structure rather than just surround it and pour on
Outside.
water and basically, you know, call it a total loss, and you're just, you know, looking for, make sure it doesn't spread to other structures. So I'm having made those comments at that meeting, I'm starting to feel a little foolish now that we're backing off from that tonight. It's not the first time I've felt foolish sitting here, but, you know, it's nonetheless a bit, still haven't gotten comfortable with the feeling.
And no one says we have to back off of it. It's our choice whether we back off of it or not, and there are other options. Councilor Lehman?
I raised a whole host of concerns that I have on this, and I'm not necessarily saying this is not the right thing to do, but before we do it, we should make sure this is the right thing to do. 'Cause I'm not convinced that that it is, but I'm not convinced that it's not either. I'm just not sure, because a lot of issues have risen between a couple weeks ago and tonight, and which I did talk to the city administrator and the fire chief about, and I think it would behoove us to dig a little bit more into this issue, and make sure that if we're going to do this, this is the right direction to go, and if we do it, that we've got a plan in place. We can explain exactly how it's going to work, you know, where it's going to go, and how it's going to unfold over the course of 5 or 10 years. I did ask him for some information that I don't have yet. I haven't heard a public outcry that our response time is an issue. So I'm not really sure where this is driving from. I understand where the chief is coming from the standards, but we set the standards. And we don't have a public outcry problem per se. Now, as far as response times, I mean, if there's flames or smoke, we have a very good response time. Our guys are there pretty quick. You know how fire guys are. They want to run into a burning structure. They don't want to go into a false alarm. Some reason they like danger or something, I'm not sure. But so I think we need to, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to get participation from multiple angles, from the general public, from the fire department, from surrounding cities, from ourselves, and really figure out if this is the right way to go or not. I know everybody's struggling with it, but I don't see everybody around us jumping on to do this right away. So I'm wondering, why is that? And I'd be curious to ask these questions to some of our surrounding neighbors to see why they're not doing it, and get their reaction too. Thus, I think it's a good idea to have these discussions and find some of this information out. And I'm really concerned about once once you do this, you know, what's the impacts internally? You know, if are we going to have nobody respond to daytime calls because we have 4 people sitting there waiting for a daytime response? So in a net effect, do we end up having less daytime response because of the 4 sitting there? I don't know the answer to these questions. It's something we need to look at. How does it work for your requirements to respond to calls, so many per year? Do we have requirements during the day? Do these work against them, or do they not count? There's more to this than just hiring 4 people and putting them at a building. You know, how do you gauge productivity of downtime? Don't know.
Councilor Clay.
Just one quick question, then I want to hear from our 2 other council members on the issue, but if we have a public outcry about response times to fire department responses, then we have already failed in our jobs. Our job is to make sure that that doesn't occur, that the situation doesn't, you know, get so bad that there is a public outcry about response times. So, anyway.
Councilor Whiting.
You know, I think a study group is a good plan in some respects as far as looking at a full-time issue and getting the volunteer firefighters used to that. I have had some familiarity with the full-time group and the part-time group, and they kind of butt heads at, oh, those are the pros, or, you know, those are the volunteers, you know, and it does create some issues within the department that I think maybe the time will grow into that. Those are the internal issues. The study group could help give us some time for the scale to come on board and work through that. My concern here is that, you know, our population has grown over 20 years, let's say. Our fire department hasn't grown at the same pace. We've had that group of great guys that take care of business, but we haven't incrementally grown, and the idea of not having enough coat hooks, to me, is not a good excuse. We'll find somewhere to put the gear, as far as I'm concerned, till we get to that level. And I think we're one incident away from public outcry, and I don't want to be sitting up here saying, yeah, you know, we didn't give them the budget. Now, I'd like to see growing, maybe with the 6 paid on-call people, start growing that level, working our way up incrementally, maybe not jumping into that full-time situation yet, but I think we need to see some positive growth. And it's just the way it is. We've been very lucky, and I think I am not comfortable with the 15-minute response time.
Councilor Sherman.
Well, we've had many discussions about the fire department over the past 2.5 years that you and I have been here, and probably many previous. And it seems that we, at no point in time, have been very decisive about it, just in terms of, again, our lack of expertise. So when I think about putting together a commission or to do this study and talk more about coordination with scale, I think that that's a smart thing to do. We've talked about the Southbridge Fire Station, and it's slated, it's out there a few years out, but when that was originally planned, that radius, there was going to be quite a few more rooftops when that original plan was in place. So, you know, how do you figure out, where does Prior Lake play, where does Savage play, where does the Mdewakanton play potentially, and what does that look like in coverage of the east when the east isn't as big as the east was intended to be for population. So I mean, I think there are a lot of questions, and there's a lot of conversation that we've had that has never brought us to a point of decision. The reason that we get numbers and a budget is because with the budgeting situation, we are trying to be decisive and say, okay, this is what we're going to commit to and what we're going to do next year. I don't know that if we don't add these in 2013, it doesn't seem to me to be detrimental, because it seems like we're on more of a 5 to 7 year plan, and it would behoove us to do the right thing versus bring people on board and then decide that we need to undo it all. So I'm supportive of doing more study and determining what that right thing to do is, and potential coordination with other Scott County agencies.
All right. Yeah.
I'm reminded that if you do choose to take the recommendation to do a study, the budget as proposed would have added the 4 full-timers July 1st. In
Mhm.
effect, what you're doing is you're just deferring it for 6 months if you do put it in the 2014 budget.
6 months. Okay.
And they were all 6 months, correct? The 6 part-time as well?
In the budget, you included
They're July 1.
6 paid on-call
Mhm.
and 4 full-time. The 4
Each one
full-times
July.
won't
In the-
start until July 1st,
June
however.
one,
The budget.
July one?
The 6 paid
Improvements.
on-call won't
Right.
start till July either.
All right. So, Councilor Clay, with
Well,
this,
I'm starting to think that if I'm gonna lose this argument about doing the study, but the study should be completed by the 3rd quarter of next year. Maybe a compromise would be to put the 6 paid on-call firefighters in the budget, but only for the 4th quarter of 2013. If they decide they need them, it's budgeted to start in the 4th quarter. If they don't need them, it's a nice underspend.
why not July 1?
It's the number quarter I pulled out of the air.
Councilor Lehman.
I would support leaving the 6 paid on call in the budget for next year for July 1. And regardless of what we do with, even if we go full-time, it never hurts to have too many paid on call. That's my feeling.
Councilor Whiting.
When we're looking at the paid on call, we're budgeting.
Oh, wait a minute, I misspoke. I was I didn't mean paid on call. I meant budgeting the 4 full-time
Full-time?
firefighters to start in the 4th quarter.
'Kay.
Which
That's
changes things, so.
Councilor Whiting.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Chief, we got in our budget $40,000 for 2013 for the paid on call. Is that just a number that you picked using your number of incidents and paying them out if they all showed up?
That's an average payroll for a paid-on-call firefighter. If you take all our paid-on-call folks, add that dollar divided by how many people, you end up with an average, what they get paid in a salary or per year, and then you add the 6 and you come up with the 40,000.
So it's a fairly
Plus
strong
our
average.
pension is in there.
Okay, so it's a fairly good number. It's not
Right.
like, they're showing up for every call and.
No.
Okay.
All right, so Chief, I have a question for you. With that, the 6 paid on-call firefighters, the discussion that we had with the 6 were gearing up for a 3rd Southbridge station.
That is correct.
Is there, from your point of view, is there any point in just hiring paid on-call without the fire station going in the next 2 years?
I mean, we can always,
That,
the more,
we can always use firefighters.
we
is
can
not a
always
good
use
answer.
firefighters. The more paid-on-call folks we get, the opportunity of having more people show up during the day does come into play. If you do the calculations, if we have 8 to 12, if we have 8 people show up during the day out of 40 people, I'd need 80 people to get 16. So averages are averages, I guess. So, and that you still ain't getting I still can't guarantee you a time of what we're going to respond to.
Councilor Lehman.
How many folks do you anticipate are eligible for retirement in the next couple of years?
7.
I'd go with the 6.
The 6 paid on-call?
Yep.
I don't understand why.
I mean, why?
Why would you go with the 6 instead of the 4 full-time?
Well, you could have 100 paid on call, and you don't know how many are going to be able to respond at any given time. Because we're going to do, and I would wait on the full-time, and I would budget that for 2014, January 1st, tentatively, pending the outcome of a study.
Okay.
That's kind of where I'm going with it.
So we've got 6 paid on-call starting in July.
Yep.
We've got his suggestion of the 4 paid January of 2014.
Tentative pending the outcome of
Yep.
the study.
And then if I can speak it correctly this time, my proposal to do the 4 full-time firefighters, budget them for the 4th quarter of 2013 was what I meant to originally say. Is that something is just gonna die right from the get-go, so we can cross it off, or does anybody have any thoughts?
I would prefer to hire, if we were to do anything, put into the 2013 budget, the full-time firefighters make a lot more sense to me to solve the daytime problem than just adding more paid on-call firefighters, because that doesn't really solve the problem. That just adds a little more percentage to the problem. Councilor Lehman.
Okay, it was about 10 minutes ago that you argued to do a study to find out if we're gonna go full-time or not,
I have not argued to do anything yet.
okay?
I was just saying that that's an option, and we're talking
Okay,
about it now.
All right, because if you're gonna do a study, you're gonna get the results sometime June, beginning of June, and if you're gonna budget it for the 4th quarter, that's gonna give a very short window the chief to take whatever information comes out of a study to put it in place to hire and go. And it would be a lot easier if he knew exactly what he was doing before he did that, because you don't know what's gonna come out of the study. I mean, the study might say, yeah, we need 5, and we need it this way, and he's thinking it's gonna be 4 this way, so now he's gonna have to change his thinking and do it 5 this way, and plan for that, and gear up for that, and go with that. I don't know what's gonna come out of the study, but whatever comes out of it, he's gonna have to take that information and prepare to do that, and he can't prepare until he has that information. So we're almost like saying, here's where you're going, do it tomorrow, you know?
He's trying to make quick decisions.
Well, maybe on a fire, but
I agree with you on that. I've been involved in these full-time, and when it's nationally recognized test, it's a written test that's given 400, 500 people. So get ready, Chris, wherever you are. They'll show up because all these volunteers that in their heart want to be full-time. And to make it so we're not feathering the beds of our volunteers, we have to have a legitimate process, which would be a written test. Top 95% go on to the physical agility portion of that. And from there, you have your pool of candidates. That's when, the interviews start. So there's a process if it's going to be actually a recognized hiring process.
I don't think you're gonna be able to smash that in between June and 4th quarter.
Well, we can always make the committee come back to us in April or May. I mean, we're still talking 9 months to get it done.
I wouldn't rush it. I mean, if that's what comes out of this, I mean, you're gonna wanna do it right. I mean,
Councilor Sherman.
Well, and part of it too is you could potentially be waiting on Scale or other groups.
Mhm.
It's not just us, so to allow the time to do that makes sense. And again, we just opened a new fire station, so we're not needing to build it tomorrow.
Right.
Well, we didn't open a new fire station. We
Moved one.
we
We moved it.
we closed the fire station and opened a new one. Our net is the same.
Transferred.
But our geography has
Our
changed.
geography has changed.
All right, so Councilor Clay, in a best case scenario, understanding what is going on up here, you would like to have 4 full-time firefighters starting October 1st, 2013
Well-
in the budget. Am I understanding you correct?
I threw that out as a topic for discussion. But you're making sense, and you're making sense, and as far as the amount of time it's gonna take to fill those positions once, if we decide to fill them. So now I'm waffling between 4 full-time or 6 paid on call. I wouldn't mind just budgeting for it right away, and I think the whole discussion of a committee to research it more is just a way of giving us a budget option. And if we need one, then fine, let's put it off for another year. If we don't, then let's move ahead and get on to another subject.
Well, part of my issue with this is we haven't had a substantive conversation. I was here for the November of last year meeting about fire department stuff. And this year we haven't had it about the third station, exactly what Councilor Sherman was talking about. Is I'm not convinced yet that we actually need the third station, and if we build it and staff it, if that's not going to cost more to taxpayers and people who live in Shakopee than just paying more in insurance. And I don't know if that is the case or what, and we haven't had that discussion yet, and I would like to have time to have that discussion. But our options are, we could have a committee, take it outside of council and talk about it and come back with recommendations to council for it, or we can have that, we can put, when we're setting our preliminary budget, we can put in the money in the preliminary budget, and between now and December 1st, when it's time to have the final budget, we can have that discussion as a council between now and then, and have this 165,000, if we need all 165,000 of it, in the preliminary budget now, and then once we get to December, if we can have those conversations as a council between now and December, if we need the third station. If we need the third station, and we're gonna do that within the next 2 years, we have to put these 6 paid on-call firefighters in. That's pretty much non-negotiable from my perspective of it.
I agree.
And so we have to do that. Do you want to put it in the preliminary budget for now, and then once we get to December, if we can have more information and make council decisions based on this, as opposed to just talking about the staffing? Is that an option? Councilor Lehman.
If you put first of all, is I don't want to pay taxes for something I'm not receiving. I don't want to pay for full-time firefighters that I don't have. So if you
Right.
if you set a budget and you show it in there, A, you're skewing the study because it's already budgeted, in my opinion. B, you're charging me for something I'm not receiving.
What do
So
you mean we're charging you for something you're not receiving?
well,
if
if-
it's not in the final budget, you're not getting charged for it.
To be
Right.
clear, it's not in the budget until the final budget is set in December.
yep.
Right.
But if we're talking about doing a study and hiring possibly in 2014, it should be budgeted in 2013 period.
That's not what I'm talking about right now. What I'm talking about right now is having those discussions and not having, this is gonna be a long night, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, having those discussions between now and, when does the final levy need to be, Mark? Final levy, December 1st, December 15th?
December 25th.
It'll be
December-
certified the end of December. We typically bring it to you the first meeting in December.
So between now and December, the first meeting of December, have those discussions and say, we are doing the third fire station. We're not doing the third fire station. That gives more direction to the chief as to exactly what's going on. And then we can, when we finalize the levy, we can pull it out of the levy. If we're not doing the third station, we don't need the 6 paid on call. But we still might need the 4 full-time, and we'll have that discussion as a council as opposed to a committee.
Well, Mayor, I'll quote the chief at the last meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, chief. If we put 4 full-time firefighters on in January of 2014, if we go that route, we will have the daytime response where we could put out the Southbridge Fire Station for at least a couple years.
Yep.
That's what I heard.
That's what I heard as well.
That would
So
be
we
part of
really
our
can't-
discussions.
We can't really have a discussion about whether we're gonna do the Southbridge Bridge Station right now,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't know if we're gonna have full-time fire guys in January 14 or not. Which really decides whether you're gonna be doing anything with the Southbridge Station,
Well, we would be making
sooner or later.
both decisions concurrently.
Right. They would play off of one another, and then we'd have a vote on the final levy. I don't understand what's wrong with that.
Nothing.
It doesn't make sense to me. Maybe I'm missing the point, but.
Councilor Sherman?
It's multitasking, but
So you're saying in lieu of a commission?
Yeah, instead of
this-
having a commission,
this Body has further discussion and makes decision.
this body decides we are committing to a third fire station in Southbridge by X year, or we're not committing to it in the next 5 years, so therefore we don't need to have any paid on-call firefighters, and we need to explore the daytime response. And if we are exploring the daytime response, what that would be, if anything, and actually have that discussion for 1 hour.
yeah.
Right.
And you know, if you do have a study committee, they're gonna spend half their time trying to second guess, well, what is the council gonna budget?
Right.
So we might as well just do it.
Have it ourselves.
Do it ourselves and do the budgeting and make a decision at the same time and, you know, do what we're being paid to do. You know,
Okay.
make decisions.
Councilor Sherman?
I think the only piece then we're missing is the potential coordination with other,
Scale.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, with scale and with other surrounding
Right.
communities. So that's the miss potentially. If we
Right.
go that route is, if there are opportunities, we would already have our plan, and yes, we could still potentially coordinate.
Right.
However, it may not be as effective or robust as it would be if we had studied it.
Within
only for a
scale,
year.
within scale, I am championing that project, and it is going slowly, but that's okay. And there's what we're talking about fits in with what this fits into the end goals of what scale is talking about. It may mean transferring a full-time person from city to city or something like that, but I think there are a lot of ways, once scale gets to the end goal of what they would like to accomplish, that this would fit in with that. I am fairly confident in saying that.
And then would it be potentially revenue generating for us? Or would we be reimbursed for his services?
That is all to be figured out yet.
I mean,
Gonna take
I
a
guess
fee
those are
study.
the other
That's where the
questions,
fee
right?
study comes into play.
Mhm.
Exactly. All right, so what, Councilor Whiting, where are you at now?
I'm still looking at ramping up a little bit with the paid on call with the 6, and I would wait for information and study on the full-time, because I'm not there yet.
Would you like to have that discussion as a council
Yeah,
between now and
yeah.
December 25th, or
we
would you
can-
rather have put it off with a commission and come back to us January 1st? I mean, June 1st.
I think we should be able to make that decision and come up with, have the experts and give us the information we're looking for through the fire department and county, and see where that's going, if it's going. I think by that time, we should have a good handle on that. So I
So-
still like to see ramping up for those retirements and, the possibility that we'll need those folks.
Why do I have to ramp up for retirements?
There was, 7 retirements in the next few years you had mentioned?
Yeah, but that just,
Potentially.
well,
Potentially.
even if
Potentially.
So
they
they're-
retire,
they're
we'll just
there.
hire a new person.
And they're also potentially having the ability to answer daytime response. And I think we've fallen behind on keeping
Okay.
that fire department staffed.
So do you want to leave the full 165 in the preliminary budget, or 125, or 40?
Well, I'm looking at the 40 right now.
Hmm.
The paid on call is 40 on my sheet here.
Right. So you're saying in 2013 we will not be hiring full-time?
Well, we could leave it until December. It doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying, is we want to leave the 165 in until December.
You know, I could understand that, but I
Okay.
don't know.
Are we gonna be doing like a show of hands on each of these items as we discuss them?
I believe so, yeah.
Why don't we start with the 6 paid on call, see where that gets us?
Well, that's a good point.
For putting the 6 paid on call in the final budget or in the preliminary budget? And talking about it, or are you looking at leaving?
Everything we're talking about tonight is for the preliminary budget.
Right. Okay, so all right, show of hands, 6 paid on call in the preliminary budget. Done.
Mhm.
We have made one decision.
Thank you.
And it's only 7:30.
Exactly. 4 full-time in the preliminary budget. Show of hands.
Preliminary? Okay.
Okay, it is in.
It's in? Okay.
Yes. All right. So that piece is licked for tonight. And what we'll need to do is have that discussion sometime early November. Is that?
We could start anytime they want.
Well, we can start anytime they
It's
want.
gonna be
but
a big
I don't know if you
discussion.
Not
need to
tonight.
have more time than that, or are you good? All right. So we in end of September, early October.
We will get it to you as soon as we can, and I would suggest certainly before November.
Okay. So
And we're probably gonna need an extra night or two.
I'm thinking this might be a workshop night,
okay.
so.
Except
Done.
I want pizza this time.
Okay.
You're buying?
I'll buy. I will buy. I will buy the pizza.
Put it in the budget, hold on.
Okay.
Shall we talk
Continue,
about the
sir.
other possibilities?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. let's
Why
do
not?
that.
Thanks,
First
Chief.
item that we had actually are increased sources of revenue. On that, one of the things that we found is that we've been operating our fuel operation, our
Yes,
car
boy.
washes, things such as that. We're covering our costs. We haven't been putting away for replacement of those. As we do some preliminary numbers on that, we think that we should probably be increasing revenues by about $10,000. Those would be borne by by the county and by the school district. The other thing,
Is there
we've got
flower
about $1
beds?
million in revenues right now coming into the recreation budget. If you add just 2% to that, that's about that is $20,000. So that is also one that I don't think would put us outside of our competition for what we offer at the community center. And then finally, those of you who have been on the council for a while will remember the BATSI fund. That's been spent down. We had reduced as a result of the mediated settlement that we would reduce our building permit fees. We need to take a look at what those should be now that that BATSI fund has been spent down. We don't want to be subsidizing construction activities, but we do need to have a study done. Probably that would be something we'd be coming into you within the next couple of months, so that we perhaps could be looking at this sometime earlier at the middle part of next year. We don't have a number on that. Those together, without the building permit activity, is about $30,000 worth of fees.
Councilor Clay.
Do we have any ballpark guesstimate on that at all?
No.
Nothing?
And it has to
Alright.
be tied to the cost of providing the services. So it's not going to subsidize other things that we do, but we do want to cover certainly our inspection fees.
Councilor Lehman.
When you say fee study, are we talking the full-blown fee study we originally did with Springstead's? Because there's a cost to that.
There is, and that's one of the reasons why we don't have a net or a net fee on there. We want to make sure that that would cover the cost of that, but we're pretty confident that we do need to start to increase those fees.
So we will be working with Springstead's on this, or?
We've,
Can I-
go ahead.
Councilmember Lehman, we had talked about the, going out for RFPs and getting just some quotes from some organizations that have recently done this. I'm really curious to see not just how the city of Shakopee has lagged behind others, but how have we been basically keeping our fees lower because of this litigation issue that was a number of years ago. How do we get back into the scope of how we really charge for actual costs? And that's going to take a pretty cohesive workflow, not so much of the outside consultants, but of city staff. That's where I think a lot of your data is going to come from.
My only concern, Mayor, is I don't want to undo all the work we've already done during the BATSI lawsuit, when we did do the
I
fee
agree.
study and the process and
Yeah.
the procedures that we set up. I don't want to pay somebody else
To
that's
recreate
not-
the wheel,
Correct.
right, you've got to tap into what's already been put in place. So I think that's going to be a major criteria of preparing this.
So is this, we will do this through 2013, and we will put for the 2014 budget, we'll,
We have the information, we'd like to
2013.
do it before then, implement
get
it
it
sometime
rolling this
during
fall.
2013.
so will that affect our 2013 budget?
I'm going to implement it and try and put some numbers into the final revenue numbers before we adopt.
Oh, so we can get it done that fast?
I'm working.
Oh,
I mean, the details, like with the fuel and truck wash, those types of things, we can talk about community ed, because that all fits into the study too, with the community center and the fitness and all the different fees. Fee study, I've already started talking with a couple of groups. I mean, it's just a matter of dedicating time and putting it into place here and pushing some other stuff aside.
All right.
But I think it's critical. I think your fee schedule that's gonna be introduced to you for 2013, I think it's got a lot of things that really require attention.
So does it make sense to make decisions on the 2 items in front of us now, or wait for the fee study, or should we just,
I'd say go with them.
Okay.
Let's see what we get rolling.
so that truck wash is currently what and would raise to what?
The car is 4, the truck is 6, and we have a fee that we charge a small amount for the fuel. Those have not been adjusted in many years.
Okay.
They definitely need a rewrite, and again, agreements and letters that were passed back in those days are very different than what you do now.
Okay. Council thoughts, both of these in? Council Lehman?
If we're not covering our cost on the car wash and fuel, we shouldn't offer the service.
Correct.
Surely we shouldn't be paying for it.
I agree.
So these are in at a minimum. Is that
Yeah.
show of hands, both of them? All right.
Okay, thank you.
Go.
Let's look at
That was
expend,
unanimous, Julie.
at reductions. We've got these broken down into a number of different criteria. The first are personnel issues, and obviously those affect services. One of the things that you've seen, or the oldest of you have been on the council before and have seen before, we have a single custodian remaining on city staff. At one point, we had 3. We contracted those others out. We feel that, or we figured that if the entire operation was contracted, it would save about $20,000. Next one is the front desk. Right now, that's shared by 2 part-time people, one of whom is a full-timer, but works down here half-time, as is not that uncommon in a lot of the work areas. When you call now, you'll have a press 1 for the engineering department, press 2 for the fire department, that sort of thing. That is a possibility here. We would no longer have a face at the front desk. We don't have certainly details worked out at this point. We do have some concerns about making sure that we have a separation of where payments are being made so that we don't run into issues with the audit, but we wanted to at least put this out for you that this is a possibility. Third item, the health savings plan and the flexible savings plans. When we made the transition from the full-blown Blue Cross a number of years ago, there are some administrative fees that the city picked up as a result of that. Those range depending on which of the 2 that you have, between $60 and $117 per employee. There's about 100 of the 125 or so full-time employees that would be impacted by that. We suspect that we'd probably get some pushback from some of the contract groups, but just in looking at all those things together, it's about $7,000. Again, these are items that we want to bring before you tonight so that you can see that we're looking at all the possibilities.
All right, let's just talk about those while we're at it, while we're here, Mark.
Got it, Brian.
All right, let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Item number 3, employees pay HSA and FSA fees. Is this somewhere we want to go? Councilor Clay?
Well, if it's a change to the benefits, that's gonna affect all of our contracts. That seems to me that's gonna need to be negotiated. And $7,000 isn't a tremendous savings. So between
Spend that in lawyer fees.
the amount of staff time that, being spent to renegotiate contracts or deal with that, and the bit of ill will that it would generate, I'm not sure it's worth the $7,000 worth of savings, but
Councilor Sherman?
I'm looking to Councilor Sherman for more input on that.
I agree. I don't think it's worth, I mean, 7,000 in savings is pretty minimal. When then you're talking about shifting fees to individuals of $60 to $117, and that's an employee engagement issue.
All right, it's
that
off.
I don't think we'd want to
Show of hands. Off. Councilor Lehman, do you have anything you want to say?
I'm outvoted.
Okay. Item number five. Is that right?
That was 5.
Item number 5 is not
Oh, well.
adopted. Automate or reassign front desk procedures at City Hall. Are we in this dire straits? This is where we need to go?
No.
Councilor Whiting says no. Councilor Sherman?
I think it's more of a question of the positions that have been proposed in the budget, such as taking the communications coordinator to full-time, a half-time grants writer. How would we potentially reorganize to, if you add up those, that's 49,000 right there. So is there a way within the department that there's some reorganization to incorporate new responsibilities and desired positions, and that this be a part of that bigger discussion? I don't know that it's you cross it off and you say we're gonna save 49,000, but maybe it's a trade-off to get some other functions that we would want.
Okay.
So that's just
Mr. McNeil?
my reaction.
If we're gonna be going for the ad positions, I think you probably wanna get the best qualified people for that to ensure their success.
Right.
And I'm not sure that that necessarily is what we'd be able to do just by moving.
Well, and what I
existing staff
mean
around,
is
that's
a
what you're looking for.
reorganization so that it's not you're cutting 49,000 from the budget, but rather you're reorganizing the department, which may mean reassigning or laying people off in order to get the structure that is desired.
That's one of
If-
the alternatives before you.
Yeah,
is
so if we're
layoff, yes.
putting on the table that we think that these functions may not be needed, but there are other functions that are needed, then that's the way, I don't know, that I would look at it as a reorganization.
Certainly, that's what's before you tonight. We have presented a budget that's darn close to a flat levy.
Yep.
And just depending on what your initiatives are, we haven't been providing services, and we need to figure out, how do you reposition the city for adding these other things, whether you want to pay for them by reprioritize the resources that you have been spending, whether you want to raise the tax levy to pay for those. I mean, that's the policy decision you'll have to decide.
So this could be a way to pay for that want
Correct.
/ need.
I think any of these on these sheets are a way to pay for the initiatives, the additional things that we haven't been providing.
Councilor Lehman?
I would much rather have a warm-blooded body for a taxpayer of Shakopee to come, that takes the time to come down to City Hall with an issue, or to give us some more money besides taxes to buy a permit or whatever, than I would to spend money on flower baskets, to be quite honestly with you. So I would keep that, and I would find other things to cut out of the budget.
There would still be warm bodies back here
At-
the desks.
That would be a phone bank, basically, is what my understanding would be.
Right, for
where
calls.
You'd call and you'd push this number for that, this number for that, this number for that. So we'd have to put a phone booth there, so when somebody walks in the door, they could actually pick up the phone, call City Hall from inside City Hall, and have it tell them which department they want.
No, they could just walk up to the desk.
Right. Then they would say, no, wrong department, it's over that way.
Got
Or it's
it.
upstairs, or.
I'm just discussing. Councilor Clay?
Does this 49,000 in savings, is that taking into account the cost of a automated phone system to do the answering?
We have done some preliminary research on that. The existing system that we have could be recalibrated to accommodate that.
At minimal expense?
It shouldn't be the thing that would make the difference on your decision.
Have we then accounted for the other extra time that's going to be spent by, I'm guessing mostly planning's department, who's the nearest window to the door?
Once again,
People are, if there's no receptionist, they're gonna go to them, and so
Understand.
they're gonna be actually working as a receptionist and spending time doing that instead of,
with any of these alternatives, it's going to be a reduction in service. And if you redistribute duties to other employees, that means what they've been doing isn't going to get done as effectively or as efficiently as it has been. This is all a matter of compromise. What do you feel comfortable with? Where do you want to prioritize your resources?
All right, is there anyone in favor of eliminating the front desk positions? Is there anybody in favor of doing that?
Like looking at it,
Councilor Sherman's in favor of looking at it, so as we talk about the
the other.
communication, we'll think about it, but for right now, it doesn't make any sense just eliminating that position, correct? Okay, it's off. All right, change from employee custodian to contracted services for cleaning buildings.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so tired of arguing.
Mark,
The history on it is that a number of years ago, we had full-time custodians, and then someone decided that it'd be a great way to save money to contract out those services. But when the economy went, or was doing really great, they couldn't find college graduates to work for $7 an hour to clean rooms at night because they couldn't find nothing else. The people that they were able to hire weren't doing a very good job, and the city decided that wasn't good enough, so that they changed their mind again and went back to and hired full-time custodians. Hiring those full-time custodians with the implied agreement that, yeah, this is your full-time job for as long as the grass shall grow and the moon shall phase or whatever. And now we've decided, well, the economy's bad and we can get, college graduates to do custodial work again, so the jobs gets done really well, but that'll phase back. We made a commitment to hire full-time custodians, and I think it's poor form to just change our mind because the market at the moment has changed and we can get good service from custodians at a little cheaper price, or from contract custodians at a little cheaper price. I've made this argument about 10 times in the last 4 or 5 years.
all right, other
That's
thoughts?
my argument.
Councilor Sherman.
This is where adding headcount and adding employees is a very big decision, because then in turn, years later, you come to decisions such as this. So I would just call that out as we are looking at potentially adding positions tonight.
Good point.
It's a very difficult decision when you come to this point. It's easy to add, but it's hard to take away. I've said it before, I'm supportive of this because I think it makes sense for efficiency and streamlining. I mean, I know that we made a generous severance offer to people last year. And yes, it'd be great to manage it through attrition. If the individual in the spot chose to leave and then we didn't backfill them, it would be less painful for everyone. But I'm open to looking at it for this year.
When I've gone through these in the past, there have been, just with my working and facilitated some of these switches over from government positions to private positions, sometimes there've been landing, basically. So when the company that's coming in and going to perform the services, we can say, if you want the contract, this person needs to be hired needs to be on 6 months or whatever it is. Is that a possibility from our side of things? Chris?
Candidate?
The company that currently has the contract for cleaning the community center youth building and city hall and the library has indicated a willingness to interview and consider the individual that we currently employ. I would argue that having them place that individual back in our buildings after we had made this decision would not be a wise decision for the city.
Got it. Okay. All right, so this is a pretty big decision, so I will entertain a motion on this one for eliminating this position instead of just a show of hands on this. Councilor Sherman?
I will make a motion for the budget fiscal year 13 that we would eliminate the custodian who's staff, full-time staff on the city, for the city.
All right. Do we have a second?
So I figured.
And I can't second things, can I? Right? I don't think I can.
Technically, I think you can.
I think you can.
You can vote, you can,
I think Robert's
it's
rules, I'm not
poor
that's
form,
posted,
but-
I don't think, but
Right.
look it up.
It's not a great idea. All right, so it dies for lack of a second.
So we are keeping all three of these in this preliminary budget.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
All right,
Until we get to the other personnel discussions, and then the automated front desk procedures coming back, apparently. It's my understanding.
We will discuss in conjunction with the communication. Yep. All right, so is anyone in favor of eliminating city funds?
Yep.
For community events?
I am.
And I would say this is only the amount that is above and beyond what the normal 40 hours a week are that is not reimbursed by Derby Days. And it's primarily Public Works, and it's going to be Sunday parade sorts of things. Overall, the city, I think we figured somewhere in the $20,000 to $30,000 a year contribution in terms of in-kind services and those sorts.
Councilor Lehman?
I'm not opposed to the city helping Derby Days out, but I don't think we should be doing it with overtime service.
Okay.
We need to plan better to do that.
All right. Any other thoughts? All right. Show of hands for eliminating Derby Days, $1,700 in overtime wage in Public Works. All right, that one's off.
The Boards and
That's
Commissions
actually
picnic.
on, right? That's a thumbs up, right?
That one is removed from the budget.
Correct.
$1,700.
Basically what this means is that cleanup and things outside, it's gonna have to be negotiated with Derby Days if the city's gonna do it, or they'll have to find a way to get it done by volunteers, which may be difficult.
It will need to be figured out. Okay. Next item, board and commission picnic. I'm not in favor of getting rid of this.
Nor am I.
As Layman?
Kind of early. We're gonna have a turnout here pretty soon, and we can gauge it.
Yeah, exactly. We can hold this one over until the final budget. No, but I think this one's important. Councilor Sherman?
Seems expensive. 1,500. This is Minnesota. Can we just have a potluck?
This
Like
is,
hot
we do
dish?
have entertainment this year.
Got it. I
Okay.
remember that discussion. Yes.
Not much, but I mean, by the time you get through with the
Staff time.
catered, this is
Catering,
not
yeah.
including.
There's no
I know.
staff
Staff
time
time.
in
So
this.
it's
We do
just-
it on our own.
No.
Okay. Councilor Whiting?
Well, these are people that work for us for free. $1,500 is a small price to pay, whether they show up or not. The idea is that they show up, but they're working for us with little thanks and little anything, so I think it's important.
However,
Councilor Layman?
like us, they signed up for this abuse.
They did
Small
volunteer.
price to pay.
All right, is there anyone in favor of pulling this out of the budget? No, it just stays in.
All right.
All right, Mr. McNeil.
The next series relates to communications. For example, job postings right now, we do online, but we also publish the Shakopee Valley News, and occasionally in some of the other newspapers. It's about $4,000 there now. It's not something you'll see in the budget. Typically, this gets charged back to the department, and there's money left over because there's a vacancy, and we're not paying them until the vacancy's there, but it is certainly a real cost savings. So $4,000 might be added to your underspend at the end of the year. Parks and Rec brochure, we've for a number of years had partnered with Community Ed. We aren't doing that any longer. In the budget earlier, we had talked about $20,000 to do a standalone on that. What we're suggesting is that between that and the current savings of $13,500, if you want to go totally online and eliminate the printed version of that, it's about $33,500. Same way, the Shakopee Hometown Messenger is something which is quarterly delivered to every address in the community. If you wanted to make that all online, that's about a $23,000 savings. Again, these are mailing costs, these are publication costs. Doesn't include what we have as far as our communications coordinator position, who is doing quite a bit of her time on that. That would allow her to do some of the other communications things which you've talked about elsewhere in the budget. And then finally, newspaper subscriptions. This is primarily the Valley News and the Star Tribune. We would eliminate that to the various city departments. So,
Councilor Whiting?
I think these are all very valuable points here, good cost-cutting measures. The only concern I have here is the Park and Rec brochure and how many classes would go unfilled and how much money we'd lose at a Park and Rec level. That's my concern there. Otherwise, I think online is probably a good place for it, but I don't know if any study or any thought has been put into that.
Sarah, I'm assuming you're here for Jamie tonight. Any comments on that? Up at the podium? Thank you.
It's
We'll
the
break her in
televising
here.
thing.
Don't make her sign in, though, will you?
Stand up on camera.
I do know of one city that has gone totally online. They have suffered quite a bit. The classes have gone unfilled just due to the fact that you don't have that brochure laying on the table, reminding them to register. So that's kind of what I've seen, but that's one city that's done that. I mean, it might be something where we need to look at, if we would go online, do we still have to send out some reminder?
Councilor Lehman.
I've heard the arguments on both sides. I mean, I've heard the argument over the years that a lot of people, it goes right into the garbage can, they don't even read it. And then there's the other people that sign up, Johnny, Janet, and everybody else. So it would be nice if we could target those that use it somehow. You know, anybody that's signed up for a program gets put into the mailing for one, or something like that. But
The
I
problem
don't
with that is it makes the postage so much more expensive
Right.
than if it were, because it just
Bulk,
goes into
yep.
the bulk mail,
Yep.
and that saves us a lot of money. So if it were only, it would be more expensive to send it to postage-wise to half the city than just
Right.
doing the bulk mail.
And then if you only target those that are already using the service, you don't have any opportunity for growth.
Right. Councilor Whiting was first.
I'm sorry, I think targeted marketing is a good idea, and I don't know if there's more cost to it. Some of these mailing companies have that down pretty good. But if you're familiar with that, then maybe.
We talked about it in Park and Rec, yeah.
Okay.
Do we offer it online too?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
it does go online
Everything's
also.
online.
Yeah.
Councilor Sherman?
Okay, so here's just a thought. Combine the hometown messenger pieces and the Parks and Rec brochure into a quarterly piece. It's going everywhere. You're putting,
3 times.
Okay, then do
Park
it
and Rec
Friday.
only goes out 3
so
times.
then do hometown messenger 3 times, incorporate it into the same printing,
That's a good idea.
because we're not gonna have community ed in there anymore,
Absolutely.
and just make it a city publication, and we'd at least reduce $23,000.
No, you didn't say the full.
Yes, we talked about that at the budget workshop where
Yeah.
I presented the admin department items, that you could, the city of Chanhassen does that. They send something 3 times a year. It's got city news for the first 4 or 5 pages. And it's, and then it's got the Park and Rec listings make up the remainder of the book. So we are still working on exact quotes for that, but basically what you would be doing is maintaining your current costs instead of increasing by $20,000, which is what's built into the 2013 budget right now.
Well, and then what you do with that is you work on the next couple years training people to register online and look for the information online so that we can eventually wean ourselves off of it. But I think doing a hard stop, to Sarah's point, it could, and to Councilor Whiting's point, it could be kind of detrimental to our signups.
Yep. Like Mr. McNeil said, every single item on this list has an impact. It's gonna negatively impact something somewhere. You know, there aren't any non-impactful ones left to be cut. So,
Right.
but yeah, we talked about that a couple weeks ago, and we can certainly do that.
All right, so with those items 9 and 11 there, Councilor Sherman, and I'm on board with this, with eliminating the $23,000 and going with the 33.5 combined Park and Rec brochure and hometown messenger.
I concur.
Starting place.
Yeah, and then I would love to get rid of that Park and Rec brochure and not get rid of it entirely, but get rid of the bulk of it, so that we just have, over the next few years, we can shrink that down into just lists of what's available, so people can go through and check out their lists and then go online to sign up.
So you're saying like for each offering, clearly state.
Right, this
Go
is what it
to
is,
Streamline it.
go to the,
Yep.
you
Go
sign
to
up
here.
online. Yep.
Check this out. Pull up this
Yeah.
site.
So just find ways to reduce it over the next 3 years, so it's within, I don't know, 10 grand or something like that.
Possibly a
3 years.
kiosk where they could go at the community center and sign
Right.
up or something.
Because we could just send those out and we could still print
Mhm.
500 of the real brochures and have them at the community center and here. And if people wanted them, they can go grab them, but we just don't send the
Well-
whole things out.
Printing 500 and printing 3,000 isn't gonna be a
Probably not
the
much
mailing.
savings.
difference in price.
Okay. All right. So show of hands, we are good with the 33.5 and getting rid of the hometown messenger.
We're not getting rid of it, we're combining it.
Combining it into,
Combining it.
exactly. Counselor Clay, you're in dissent.
No, I'm,
Oh, you're on, okay. All right, so number 11 is scratched, pulled out of the budget. And number 9 combines the Park and Rec brochure and the hometown messenger. Last time we discussed this, we had thought maybe that would be a little more than 33.5 to get the hometown messenger into there with the added pages. Did that get looked at all? Are we not worried about that at this point? So is 33.5 good for
Smaller type.
both of those, or do we need to have 35 in there?
I think it's close, but it may be a little bit shy, is my gut reaction from the limited research we've done and what Chanhassen has.
Okay,
35?
so 35,
Are we okay with
are we okay with
moving?
that?
Let's try to get it done for 33.5.
That'll occur. We're just saying is we need to make sure we have sufficient funds in the
Little-
event that the
little
no
cushion.
one's. Yeah.
Right.
little contingency fund.
All right,
Correct.
so 35 for this
35, yeah.
item, show of
Yeah.
hands. All right,
Okay.
Counselor Lehman in dissent. All right. Counselor Sherman.
I have a question on the first one, the
All right.
eliminating city job postings in local newspapers. Do we know the sources of our candidates? Like what percentage are our candidates coming from newspaper application versus online application?
Not highly scientifically, my opinion from reviewing them, because we do ask, where did you hear about the job, is it's going to have varying impacts depending on the job that we're advertising for. For our full-time jobs, I think it'll have little to no impact on the number and quality of applications we receive. I think for our part-time jobs, we could potentially see a fall off in applications. I think a lot more of our part-time employees are looking locally for a part-time job, and they're not specifically looking for a municipal job versus someone that wants to be a police officer or a city planner or whatever. The go-to place is the League of Minnesota Cities website if you're looking for a career in municipal government. But if you're looking for a summer job as a college-aged student or a part-time job on the weekend to bring in a little more income from your family, you're looking local, and I think we see a lot more of those from our newspaper publication.
Counselor Clay.
Well, let's split the difference and just post in the, or advertise in the newspapers for the part-time positions.
We can certainly try that for next year.
Counselor
Is
Whiting.
that the majority of this 4,000, I'm guessing?
Is the part-time?
I would say 2,500 is part-time just because of the quantity. We hire a lot more in numbers of part-time staff. And I would include in that our annual advertisement for firefighter candidates. I think that's drawing from the local newspaper. So you could cut 1,500 if you wanted to direct me not to advertise full-time positions in print newspaper anymore.
Counselor Lehman.
How would the general public know if the city is hiring a full-time position?
Currently, our current practice is all job openings are advertised on the city website. Full-time openings are always advertised on the League of Minnesota Cities website, which I would say is a go-to place if you're looking for a career in municipal government. Our 99.5% of our applications for licensed police positions come from the Post Board's job website.
I guess what I'm asking is, how does the average Joe know to look at the League of Minnesota Cities website if the city is hiring a position?
We're not
That's why I
looking to
said I
hire.
don't think it's necessarily a good site, and I don't generally put our part-time jobs out there on that site, because I don't think the person that's looking for a summer job, or a Saturday job, maybe working at the community center type thing, is looking there. And that's why it sounds like some were suggesting that we continue advertising in the paper for those. But if you're looking for a career as a city planner or a building inspector or a government sector accountant, a police officer, any of those, the go-to place if you've done any homework whatsoever about how to get a job in the municipal sector, is the League of Minnesota Cities website.
Would we still be putting our full and part-time jobs on our website?
Certainly, that costs us, nothing. So definitely.
All right, so we good with reducing that to 2,500? Show of hands? Beautiful. All right, number 12, Mark, do you want to eliminate the newspaper subscription for city buildings?
It's for you, I think when it says go online instead, that would be probably the Shakopee Valley News, the Star Tribune. I think you hit a paywall if you're not a subscriber, so.
Are there a lot of people that read them in here?
I think
We
there
have
are.
absolutely no gauge
No,
for this.
I see them used significantly when you look at the break rooms and things like that, so people do look at them.
All right, so
Let's leave it on.
leave it in. Anybody willing to take it out? All right, it stays in. 13.
This is related specifically to recreation. We had a discussion not too long ago about the teen center. The Park Rec Advisory Board is recommending keeping it open, but if we're shaking all of the couch cushions looking for money, this is a fairly major one. This is $56,000 and is primarily part-time wages. We've got DJs and we've got bands on that. It certainly serves a portion of the community, the younger set that may or may not have access to other organized sorts of things, but that is something that we're proposing as a possible savings. Closing outdoor ice rinks, we have 5 of them right now. We just constructed 2, but if you look at the cost to provide services to that above and beyond what would be in Public Works, the cost of heating and cleaning the warming houses and doing the part-time staffing, it's about $10,000 annually. And then finally, we do have Channel 15. We have some public access shows that do run on that. It's a matter of a few hours a week for our part-time cable operator, but that's $5,000.
All right, Teen Center, Council Whiting,
Oh, Teen Center, I was gonna jump ahead.
go for it. What do you want to jump to?
Would we be refunding the part of the PEG fee to the cable subscribers?
That is for public access as well as this. I don't know how you would refund that portion.
As that fee
Who
is,
would like to speak?
okay.
Thank you.
The city's currently in a franchise with Comcast Cable through 2019 that provides us with a certain PEG fee. I think it's 40 cents, but please don't quote me on that. I think it's 40 cents per subscriber per month. For many years, at least the first 4 years that I worked here, we pulled in 40 cents per month and we only operated 2 channels. We operated public access and government, and our educational channel was dark. That seemed to give Comcast no heartburn whatsoever. They never pushed us to light it up or give back a third of the PEG fees, I don't see that as something that the city would need to do. We can
Just call it an egg fee.
we just keep, yeah, PE, EG, you're right. So, it could come up when we renegotiate our franchise of if anything, they're gonna just want the channel back to air other, things on. The 40 cents a month has never been a point of contention or a big point of concern that they've ever expressed to us.
Well, I'm paying it,
Yep.
so.
So what would this eliminate?
We operate 2 television channels currently, public access and government access, and the school district operates an educational access channel.
Okay.
The government access channel is what is airing this meeting live tonight. All of our boards and commission meetings are aired live and replayed. We replay Scott County meetings, the school board meetings, and Shakopee Public Utilities meetings. When a meeting is not airing, we run slides with words on them, job postings with the city, reminders about spring cleanup day, the scrolling text that you see on the screen. The public access channel exists to provide the public with access to the airways for programming of their choice. Wayne's World is often kind of the pop culture reference to what you do with public access.
How often is it being used currently?
I don't have off the top of my head how many programs we're airing a day. I can certainly get that for you. The history of it here has been When I first started here, we had a public access studio up at the community center. An entire room devoted to public access. You could check out equipment, you could film a show there in the studio, you could use our edit suites to edit your video and turn it in. It didn't get used, literally at all. So we narrowed that down and we closed the studio and we stopped providing a physical space for people to make shows, but we still checked out cameras and tripods and light kits and so on that you could check it out. The last year that we did that, this is the first year that we've not done that. So we did that through 2011. I think we had 6 people check something out in 2011. So the city council at this time last year discontinued that service and said, look, the channel's still there. If you drop off a DVD at City Hall, we will load it up into the channel and schedule it and air it. And so we have a part-time staff person that works 6 hours a week doing that task right now. And that's all that's left of
That's
our
where the-
public access channel.
Okay, so that's where the 5,000 would come from that
Right.
part-time person.
We
All right.
get programming from 1 or 2 local churches, veterans groups, but a lot of it is programming created elsewhere that is sent here to be aired.
Elsewhere, as in where elsewhere?
We get it from other public access facilities around the metro area. We get things from the U.S. Army. We get things from the State Department of Education that have like a public service message that they want to get out. I've argued, and some members of our Telecommunications Commission disagree with me on this, but in the age of YouTube and kind of self-broadcasting or self-airing your videos and where they can be seen around the world by your families and friends, that the need for and the interest in a channel that only airs in our zip code has, diminished with technology and trends in this industry.
All right, thoughts, Councilor Lehman.
Well, I would keep the limited public access the way it is currently. I have a hard time explaining how we build new ice rinks and then want to shut them down. Just makes us look bad.
All right, well, let's just deal with public access for right
Okay.
now. Let's take these one at a time. Councilor Whiting?
It's kind of your opportunity to put something out there. It's kind of part of your freedom of speech in your community. If you want to put something out there, when I was part of the chair of the Cable Access Corporation, there was a lot of use. There was a lot of equipment being used. There was grants available. It kind of dwindled down since then, and different factors were in there. I think the opportunity to put something out there is important for anybody. Could put something out there. I think some of the rules have gotten a little more stringent over the years and made it more difficult for people to use. So that's
Okay.
my thoughts.
Any other thoughts on the matter? Councilor Sherman?
I agree with Ms. Wilson on the technology capabilities and access that people have now.
Okay. All right, so let's do a show of hands. All those in favor of eliminating the public access from our budget? Wow, that was a sigh.
Yeah, well, I was
That's a
just
3.
thinking,
That is 3.
Got it?
it's one,
Talk about it.
we had that one programming that was getting all kinds of complaints from people for being
Mhm.
slightly obscene or inappropriate. That's one less thing I'll have to deal with.
All right. Close outdoor ice rinks. I know in the past that this has been, let's see, I think it was 2 winters ago. I don't remember if we went through Park and Rec or not, but there's one rink that doesn't get used very often at all downtown, that had been shut down for saving money, and I think it was,
Holmes Park.
yeah, and it was $3,000 if I recall. Jamie had said we're gonna save on that.
It sounds high, but
Okay,
go ahead.
a couple grand.
If it's fully loaded, including Public Works time, but if you're looking at budgeting sorts of things, you may not be able to include that.
Okay, it might have been that. So I'm obviously not in favor of closing all the outdoor ice rinks, but if there are ones that Park and Rec has said hardly ever gets used, because I think they had less than 20 people all winter long, if I recall. use that, because when they were counting by having a staff member there, it was used very little. And I would have no problem with eliminating the ones that staff says hardly gets used. But I don't know what people think.
If I could Mr. Loney, you've talked in the past about the weather and the contingencies if it's a winter like last winter. At some point making a call so you just don't keep trying to make rinks stay filled when there's just no way weather-wise they can stay filled. How would that fit into this plan? Would this be something that you would make an assessment on at some point in the winter and just determine this year we're not gonna fill 2 or 3 rinks?
I think, to answer your question, it can vary quite a bit. I think I sent the information over to Mr. McNeil earlier, but I believe this is in 2011, it was like $3,500 for all the rinks. And then in 2010, it was more like $9,000, so
Because in 2011, were you actually able to fill any rinks?
we tried.
Okay. That's kind of it.
Successful.
No.
We tried. I mean, it's just last year was a very tough year. I don't know if we did open, I think, for a few weekends,
Yeah.
but maintaining the ice or keeping the ice was just too difficult.
All right, anyone?
Other winters, it's been, we'll get two, maybe 2.5 months.
All right, Councilor Sherman?
I think if the weather is favorable, we should be providing them. And a lot of it has to do with our indoor ice rink is taken primarily by hockey, whether it be high school or the association. There's not much free skate time, and that's what these are there for, and it is Minnesota, so.
All right, anyone want to eliminate any of the ice rinks? Show of hands. Nobody. All right, 14 stays in the budget. Item number 13, close the teen center. Councilor Sherman.
The Hockey Association came to us earlier this year with a proposal to use the space for off-ice training, which we have not explored any further. We just simply had Todd come in and talk to us about it, and I would be interested in hearing more
Okay,
in
other thoughts?
concert with this, because that's a space addressed.
Councilor Whiting.
Well, we did send it back to the Park and Rec Board, and they recommended that they don't close it. And to me, if you keep 1 or 2 kids out of trouble, off drugs, something to do, it's worth it.
Councilor Lehman.
Well, it adds diversity to the community center, because otherwise you're gonna have strictly hockey. The thing we need to do is we need to figure out how to lower this $56,000 cost.
Councilor Clay.
I was wondering, how many teens do we typically serve in a year, month, whatever? Is anybody keeping track of how many?
They do have numbers.
Yeah, Brad had them numbers.
We can get that information for you.
I think it was 40 a day.
If I could ask, one of the costs, as we've talked about with this whole teen center, is the programs and the different activities and the groups and such that we bring in. When you say, is there a way to cut the costs, is there something that you feel at this point we wouldn't need to offer, or something that would be a thing we could reduce to cut the costs?
If we're hiring a band up there for these teenagers, I wouldn't get the Shaw Brothers. Too
Good
expensive.
plan.
All right. Councilor Clay.
I was wondering if the police chief would like to chime in on his idea of what kind of benefits it brings to the city from keeping kids off the street and along the straight and narrow pathway. Oh, come on up to the
You
microphone.
get to go to the mic too.
It's not your first day either. Come on.
I think like any extracurricular activity, anything, whether it's athletics or the arts, music, anything that keeps them occupied up there, keeps them from trying to see how many cars are unlocked and going through them. So we definitely have an increasing percentage of our population that are going to be teenagers over the next few years, and consequently a new high school down the road. So I think there's also an increasing percentage of our population in the community that gonna be that age too, so.
I think if I can add just specifically for the community center, if you'll recall the issues that we were having in terms of the number of police calls just to deal with kids that would otherwise congregate in the lounge area, and they're just, horsing around, pushing and doing all that sort of thing. Sometimes that escalated, and having the teen center now has eliminated an awful lot of that.
With the teen center, I think it has extraordinary use, very good use for the city, and we absolutely have to have a teen center, I believe. But I think that the way we currently have it is a horrendous use of space. I think it's a gigantic room that we could do a lot of other things in that room and have additional meeting space and other things going on. The value we see on such a big room, I think, is not great. So I would love to ask the park board to rethink using the space and possibly move the teen center to a different room or a different location that's smaller, so we can utilize that space, which was big enough to temporarily house a library for a while. I'd better utilize that space. I would love to see it rethought how we deliver that service over the next. Councilor Sherman.
Well, and we also need to consider how much are we spending per user? Is the city spending $2,500 per user or $100 per user? Like, what does that look like, and how reasonable and
We can pull
appropriate
those in.
is it?
Take a look. Because they do have a pretty good system of maintaining who's there and when and how long. Because I know Brad and you and I have talked about this, and I think we could pull that for you. Is there a budget number as you talk about reducing this? Is there a budget number you would like us to aim for?
I think it depends on how many users you have.
And I don't think, even if we did change it now, we wouldn't save anything. It would probably cost us money budget-wise in 2013 for moving everything and as it goes. So I'd
Okay.
love as a council to give direction to park board to really look at, is that the best use of the space, or could it be in the log cabin or within the schools district someplace that the school has rooms that aren't used, and really look and see if that's the best use of that space within the community center where we hardly have any space to do anything.
Okay.
And lower the cost.
Right.
Okay.
I'd agree.
Councilor Clay.
I was just wondering if it's wise to push teenagers into closer proximity to each other.
You're right. So that needs to be discussed. So we will leave it as this for now. Does anybody have a problem with that? All right, so it stays in.
Flip side page, technology reductions. These are things that we've looked at in terms of cellular phones and the plans that we have. If we reduce the number of employees with access to something other than just a flip phone, we think that there's probably about $7,500 in savings. The flip side of that, not meaning the flip, is that it's reduced productivity. And the other is about $15,800. We do take registrations and other payments online. There's certain things we don't do, but there's a fee for that. It's again just under $16,000 if this is something that you wanted to consider. The drawback of that is that we might have a reduction in terms of usage. So again, it's a compromise. What's your preference on those two?
All right, questions? When you say reduce productivity on the first one, what do you mean by that?
Right now, you're able to check email from a remote location. You don't necessarily have to be tied to your desk. It gets people out and away. But if they don't have that opportunity, then just, the ability to get a hold right now, if we need to get someone from IT because we've got an issue, they're able to respond almost immediately. If they're out doing something, it may be an hour or two, or they're going to have to find another way to make contact to let people know when there's an issue.
Councilor Whiting.
How many users have this access?
Chris?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I would bet we have 20 to
I
25.
think it was right around 26 is the number that's coming in my head.
You've got all the sergeants, or we're moving towards all the sergeants. They may not all have theirs in hand right now. The 2 captains, the 2 chiefs. Do you have staff beyond yourself that have them, Rick?
Tom, Aja, and Ryan.
So 4 in the fire department, probably about 10 in the police department. My IT staff has them. They get their emails on their phones, so.
We're talking
if you-
senior staff pretty much, right?
Mostly senior staff or staff that travels from building to building. You know, IT staff supports employees in 7 different buildings, and they don't spend a ton of time sitting at their own desk. You know.
Thank you.
Councilor Whiting? Oh, I thought you had a question,
Nope,
sorry.
Just wanted to thank her for her input.
Yeah, I don't,
This one I have really, I have no idea how to answer from our point of view. Councilor Lehman?
Well, and not to sound negative, but I would say 9 out of 10 times when I call City Hall, it's pretty hard to get a hold of anybody. From my position, not that I need a permit or something. But, so I'm in favor of keeping the options open for senior staff, so that not only can they communicate with each other, but we can communicate with them. So that's where I'm at with it.
Councilor Clay?
maybe we should get rid of caller ID so that they won't know who's calling.
Hey, I think it was the voicemail.
Oh, did you hear the heavy sigh?
We rush through the phone when
That's
we
funny.
see your names come up,
Yeah.
so.
All right, so anyone want to remove this item from our budget? Show of hands. All right, it stays in. Reduce use of credit card fees and eliminate fees for credit cards. This would eliminate online registration, wouldn't it?
Pretty much.
And it's gonna create more staff time in finance. Did you have to process all these individual invoices and write out separate checks?
All right, does anyone want to eliminate credit cards?
Step back.
I got
Councilor Lehman?
I got a better, why don't we just take away all the credit cards and then we'll save all kinds of money?
It's,
These are the actual,
other people's
our
credit
These are
users.
people
They're giving us
calling
money.
in.
I know.
All right.
Here, that brings up the question though, and that is, bringing forth, when we talk about fees and the 2013 rates, adding a fee for use of a credit card because of the charge we get when people use a credit card.
I can tell you state law won't allow me to put that on a.
No, it has
report
to
at
be
my shop.
built into your fee.
Right.
Exactly. But is that something staff should consider based on, well, we know what's council's
it's a
thoughts?
cost. So
It's a cost.
so it
Cost
should
of
be.
doing business.
Mm-hmm. So
Yep.
increase our fees to cover credit card fees?
Absolutely, they should cover the cost.
Is that, okay, I'll bring that forward then, because right now we're not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely should cover the
So
cost.
how do we make 2 fees? What if they pay by cash?
I'm working on that.
Well, yeah, what you could do is you spread it across all, and so it's not the full fee on every transaction or whatever, right?
So okay, so we'll apply that, okay?
So
All right.
If I understand, then we will keep that, but increase fees to cover the credit card cost.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Last, we just have general reductions. We have, for example, the plastic fire hats and badges and things
Stickers.
like that, which are handed out at police and fire functions. We may have an opportunity perhaps through the Crime Prevention Fund to do, some of the funding on that. But again, it's a small part of the overall budget, but we're just presenting what we could think of that might be an issue.
Anyone like to remove this? Nope, stays in.
Okay, this is one that we wouldn't necessarily have had in here, but I know it is something that has been brought up before. The Upper Valley Drainage Way, whether you do mowing or don't do mowing from an ecological standpoint, I think the Public Works Director would argue that there's a real need to do this. But even if we stop doing it, it comes from the Storm Drainage Fund, and therefore it really isn't going to impact the general fund levy.
This one is me. It drives me absolutely crazy that we mow so much all throughout the city. Because it is, could be transitioned, but that's just me. So we'll, skip
Should I
it.
move
Does
to the next
anybody-
one?
Eyes for lack of second.
Yeah, exactly.
That was proficient, okay.
The next one is professional organizations, and this would be for departments and for individuals. This would be the International City Managers Association, American Public Works Association, Minnesota Park and Rec Association. A lot of our training comes from these organizations. It's $12,000, but I would recommend that this is a way that you invest in your employees. We wanted to bring it forward, but it's not something that we would recommend to staff.
Either the next two items, the discontinued memberships, does anybody want to, either of those two, 19 or 20, eliminate those from the budget?
I have a question.
Yes.
On the next one.
'Kay.
What is the Suburban Rate Authority? Haven't heard
Suburban
of that one.
Rate Authority is something that I believe they probably have about 30 members, and Shakopee has been a member for probably 30 years. What they do is they monitor rate and practices by the Public Utilities Commissions, excuse me, such as XL Energy, what used to be Minigasco, XL. Shakopee has always been a participant. We have Shakopee Public Utilities Commission, so we don't get the same sort of thing, but by banding together, cities are able then to have the Public Utilities Commission when there is a petition by one of the utilities for a rate hike, they challenge that. And I think they've done a pretty successful job of keeping rates down overall. So this is something that you as a Shakopee taxpayer would not necessarily see a return on your tax bill, but the utility bill that you pay to one of the big companies is usually reduced as a result of that. They also help out with such things as undergrounding and issues relating to rights of way that the big companies might have an interest in imposing on us.
Councilor Lehman?
MLC?
Municipal Legislative Commission, this
Okay.
is one that we just started 2 years ago. We're just gearing up, that we're one of 16 member cities now, primarily in the developed or developing suburbs, which again is an advocate for, they really do pretty good tax policy sorts of questions.
Seems like an awful lot to be members to 3 of these outfits.
So the last one is the Metro Cities Group, and they really are about the only one that keep tabs on the Metropolitan Council. I know we've had some issues with them, so I'm not sure that that would necessarily be a recommendation to discontinue membership there.
All right, any recommendation for eliminating departmental dues or discontinuing memberships to those? All right, seeing none, those two stay in. All right, so Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but between the increased revenues and the reductions, we gained $62,000 there?
Yep, because you've got the 30,500 that you're bringing in from the revenues, and a reduction of 29,700.
Okay. Reduction in,
If you took items 6, 11, 8, and 15.
16.
add 31.5, sorry.
Okay, you took the, I know what you did, you took the 1,500, yes.
Yeah, and not
I
the
see.
yeah.
I've got mine just as a reduction, yeah. That's
Okay.
correct, yeah, we got the same ones.
All right,
Okay.
beautiful. Thank you,
Got
everybody.
that? Now on to initiative.
There we go. Do you have anything else you want to talk about from up there, Mark? Nope. Okay. All right, let's start with budget initiatives as to,
Everybody's yawning out there. Maybe we should take a 5-minute break.
I'll entertain that. Councilor Lehman?
Motion for a 7-minute recess.
I'll second a 10-minute.
I just wanna know where the
All right.
cookies are.
The amended, the seconder, I'll accept his amendment to my motion.
There you go. So we, discussion on a 10-minute break. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Passes 4-1. thank you. We are back from recess at 8:39, and we're going to start tackling budget initiatives. We are going to start first with the projects. So we've got from feasibility studies, neighborhood festivals, downtown flower baskets, and security system upgrade. There are 4 things here that we need to go through. Do we want to do them one at a time? Actually, let's just do all 4. Councilor Whiting, are there any of these that you want to? Actually, nope, that's not a good way to go. I apologize. Let's just do one at a time. Feasibility studies, $20,000. Do we want to keep that in the budget? Anyone have any questions as to what this is?
What is it?
Yeah, can we get a refresher?
'Kay.
on each of these?
Primarily, this would be the archaeological study in Memorial Park.
All right. You have anything you want to say,
I can
Councilor Whiting?
explain on that. There's a group that's willing to put money up to put in some informational kiosks and signage down in Memorial Park. That's a protected area. You can't touch anything without an archaeological study. There's a path, bike path planned to go that goes underneath the bridge and goes out along the highway there. That's going to connect up eventually to some state trails, I believe. And that area, you can't even put a bike path, paved bike path in without some sort of archaeological study. These don't come cheap. There'll be something that will take that and more. So this is something I think would actually add value, it'd draw a lot of interest, and it would be an asset to the park system.
Okay. And before I ask for show of hands on this, Councilor, I'm going to ask for just general feeling from council members so everybody knows where we stand. Councilor Whiting, of these 4, you'd like to keep feasibility studies in, I assume?
Yeah,
Are
that-
there other ones of these 4 you want to keep in? All of them? None of them? Where are you
I
at?
would pull the security system. I'm not sure if if that has the value, if we are, I mean, I understand the need that you want that kind of proof to be able to read license plates and have something that you can defend in court, but I don't know that we're gonna have $16,000 value out of the initiative to, I think they'll get an idea of what's going on there. I don't know if we had that much trouble up there.
All right. Anything else you're strongly recommending stay in?
I would keep the top 3.
So the neighborhood festivals and the downtown flower baskets?
Yep.
All right. Councilor Clay, how about yourself?
Well, I have this wonderful, charming little old lady who's going to be after me with her cane if we take out the flower baskets, so just to save my hide, I would ask that you consider that.
Okay. Any other ones that you desperately want to stay in the budget considering our constraints? We can come back to you. We can see what everybody else says. It's
Yeah,
okay. Councilor Lehman?
I would do the archaeology study with the trail process and make it a part of that cost, so I would cut all 4 of them, actually.
Okay. Councilor Sherman?
I agree with putting the feasibility study with the work.
Okay.
And then I would only keep the security system camera upgrade and being that it's public safety at the community center, I think that's important.
Okay. I would like to keep the downtown flower baskets in there. Security system upgrade, I'm not convinced on that at this point. Neighborhood festivals, I would love to keep in there, but I'm going to sacrifice that one for this budget, so I'm not going to fight hard on that. And then feasibility studies, I agree that when whatever we want to get done, it can be part of that process when we know. Is that correct in saying
Well, that's a little wrong, because the
Okay.
bike path would be one section of it, and this would cover all of that for the other group that wants to invest money in it.
Okay.
And raise money to help put those fixtures in the park. So this would be in addition to that.
Councilor Sherman?
But could we still do the whole process when we do the bike path? Wouldn't there be some sort of benefit to doing it once?
Well,
I mean, it would be a bigger area, but
Who can help us? Mr. Leak?
Members of the council, I think I can help you with just a small piece, but not the actual cost of the entire process. The only thing I wanted to offer is that in the budget for the planning division that you reviewed with me, we do have 10,000 for engineering studies, so if your desire was to use that in connection with the additional study that goes for this project, certainly you'd have that opportunity.
As Whiting?
wouldn't you need that for engineering studies?
At this point, there are no specific identified studies. I have kept that in the budget the last couple of years for just those situations where the council wishes to proceed with the project and there are no other identified funds because the project wasn't identified.
So we could reduce feasibility studies to 10,000? Am I
Is that
hearing?
correct, Mr. Leak? We can reduce
Down to
feasibility to 10?
10,000?
Perhaps I can ask a clarifying question of Councillor Whiting. I understood that the 20,000 was just for the bike portion, and there may be some additional study that's required beyond the area of the bike trail. Is that
Well,
right?
for the planned kiosk, informational kiosk, historical kiosks and signage, it would be more than the
It would be more.
bike path.
So my offer was, if you were looking at that additional component, I don't have an idea what that additional cost is. I don't know if anyone's looked at that. But it would probably then be 20,000 plus some additional for the kiosk areas if the council decided to go ahead with that.
As a layman?
I have a hard time budgeting for possible potential, maybe could-be's of unknown origin. If we're gonna start budgeting this way, I'll give you a whole list of maybe possibly something somewhere, somehow, and we'll have
As a
it
Whiting?
This is a $4,000 dedicated donation
from
from the Shakopee Heritage Society,
to,
and to put this in the kiosk, historic kiosk
where
in
they
the park,
donating this money to,
to
Us.
build in the park, build the
And-
kiosk.
and when are they gonna do this?
Once we know that it's gonna be done, it's there.
Okay. Do they have a date that they're gonna approach the city on this
They have
issue?
talked to the Park and Rec
They've
Board
talked.
and
Okay.
have presented.
All right. And they can't put their kiosk in the corner of the parking areas where there's already blacktop on top of the ground?
These will need some parking area space also with that. So this is not just something thrown up. This is a plan that's been put out there, presented to the park board and Jamie Polly, and
I haven't
once we
seen
have
this
the,
plan, so.
well, it's a protected area. You can't do anything down there without the archaeological study.
I would imagine you put a kiosk on top of an existing parking lot.
Not according to the state archaeologist.
You can park a car on top of a parking lot, but you can't put a kiosk.
Cars don't dig.
That probably makes sense.
I think the issue is that there is no parking lot there. I recall seeing the plan that was developed. Before you can put the parking lot or the kiosk there, you have to evaluate the site to see if there's an unwarranted intrusion under state statute and Minnesota rules. I
Correct.
think that's what Councillor Whiting is pointing
Is
to.
this actually
Yes.
across the street?
This is on the south side of 101.
Okay, so it's not in a park.
No.
Well, it is
Well,
actually
it's
part
in
of
the park now. It's been
Right,
dedicated as
right.
park.
Right.
All right, Councillor Clay.
Yes, what?
We need you to weigh in on other than downtown flower baskets. We have 3 positive votes for downtown flower baskets, so
Well, I guess I could live without the security camera and the neighborhood festivals.
okay. And the feasibility study?
Well, I would look at putting 10,000 towards that. There's 4,000 from that Jay identified in addition, and maybe we could get some additional funding from some local community that might have a vested interest in the area.
Mr. McNeil?
I guess just a response to Mr. Leake's suggestion of the engineering studies that's budgeted currently in planning. Would you want, is that what you're planning to use for the $10,000?
No. That would be separate from that.
So would $10,000 get us anywhere in a feasibility study?
I think we can get there with the 10.
All right, 10 it is. I'm on board with 10. Councillor Clay,
Yes?
are you on board with 10? at feasibility studies? I feel like an auctioneer.
Since I suggested it, yes.
I'm just making sure. All right, so we have Councilor Whiting, Councilor Clay, and myself in the positive for feasibility studies and downtown flower baskets. We don't have the votes for neighborhood festivals or security system camera upgrade at this point. Is that correct for everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
We're almost there.
All right, now we start budget initiatives. Is there any objection to getting rid of Grant Writer, other than from myself? All right, so Grant Writer is out. I think that's important to look at for the future, just so we know. Does anybody have one that they'd like to talk about next? Councilor Sherman.
The crime prevention specialist.
Yes.
With the police department. In the description that we heard from the chief, this position actually enables a sworn officer to be more effective and serve in the role of sworn officer, and this is a different skill set. So frankly, of any positions where there's like an addition, I would be in favor of adding this specific position.
Okay. I agree with you. Councilor Clay
I agree also.
also agrees. Councilor
Yep,
Lehman.
I agree with that.
Councilor Whiting.
I'm not there yet, but that's all right. You got the 4.
Explain why you're not there. Just
Well, here's my point. When they described it, it was the sworn officer that took this position and didn't enjoy it, or for whatever reason wanted out of that position. And to me, when I've seen that in my business life, it's been that there hasn't been enough to do, that there's just not, that they're bored in their position. So now we're taking it away from a sworn officer, so we're creating a position. Basically, we're putting this is a way around to put another officer on the street. It just seems, I'm just not there yet with it. I'm sorry.
that's all right. This is why we're having these discussions. All right. Anyone have a next one that they'd like to tackle? All right. We'll start from the top. Economic Development Specialist. I am a firm believer that in the direction we're going as a city, economic development is a top goal of us as a council. I don't think that we are able to, with current staffing, meet the needs of what our short-term future is with economic development. And I really think this has to be a position that will take us into the future and will bring more economic opportunity into Shakopee than it will cost as a position. I think it's very important. Councilor Lehman.
I agree that economic development is one of our top goals. However, having served with this position being staffed and then having this position cut and removed, this position is probably better served at Scott County, representing all of the cities in Scott County through scale, and then having a contact person from Scott County and Shakopee, which right now would probably be Mr. Leak, is our best contact if it's something for Shakopee. In the past, this position, when we did have this position, there was a lot of idle time. I'm not supportive of this position. I don't think we have the workload to support it, and it would be more cost effective to use a consultant as needed. And I really think we need to get Scott County and scale on this, especially Scott County, to look after the best interests of all of Scott County. My vision on this would be, we've got somebody at Scott County that's maybe paid partially based on population or something. Shakopee and Prior Lake and Savage and whoever else in Scott County, but somebody comes in and they're looking for something, they've got all the information right there, and they can place them anywhere within the county because that benefits all of us. And if Shakopee doesn't have what they're looking for and somebody else in Scott County does, we still capture that. Now, if Shakopee does have it, Scott County can, you know, vet them on, you know, maybe location, size, these types of things, and then steer them to the contact person. Now this person's on the way down, they make a phone call, they know exactly what they're here looking at, parcels, blah, 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 and now our staff is coddling them further.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my vision, and that's financially probably a better way to go. And from a standpoint of being successful overall in the county, which benefits all of us, we're gonna have to do that one way or the other. If every city is gonna try to do it itself, it's gonna get really expensive. And then if somebody does go to the county's gonna turn them off on that first initial visit and send them to the whole city that they might be considering. So I've seen in the past that this doesn't work, and the fact that we removed this position in the past shows it doesn't work. And we've got the opportunity to look much broader.
There are many good examples in the metro of where this type of position is being extremely successful and working for the community. So other thoughts? Councilor Sherman?
Well, with this position and actually the remaining positions that are being proposed to add, I wouldn't want to look at any of them as a straight addition in terms of adding a salary and adding a head count. I think that the right thing to do would be to assess the current staff and what intent do we have with this position, what tasks, what responsibilities would this position have, and how do we reorganize the staff that we have if we don't have the capability within the current staff? How do we eliminate work and potentially position that isn't providing the value and create the job with the savings? So to me, it's a reorganization
So you're talking about,
question in order to get the capability.
like for this, eliminating our transit duties from staff and being able to handle these kinds of things.
So, yeah, I mean, I
Something
don't know,
like that.
something that would be an assessment of the current.
So how do we do that with all these positions through this budget cycle?
Well, there's a process, and it depends on what staff has the capability to do that process, or if we need a consultant to do that process. Because it's basically organizational review
Mm-hmm.
of job duties and
Okay,
needs.
all right. Other thoughts? Councilor Clay?
I agree that I think we do need this position. I don't see how shuffling staff is, we've been shuffling staff for the past 6-7 years. I think it's an important position that will bring back more money to eventually to the city, you know, as development happens and gets onto the tax base. It's kind of a position that if we hire the right person, I would certainly want to have whatever person we hire on at least a year or 2 year and a half probationary period to make sure that they are in fact the right person for that job. Not entirely convinced that the last person that had it was the right person for the job. And it's not something that we can just say that we'll you know, do it through the county level or through scale, and we coordinate with all the other jurisdictions in the county, but we are also in competition with them at the same time. And I think having our own person dedicated to the city of Shakopee working is, you know, something we really need to make this work well for us.
Councilor Whiting?
I agree with much of what Councilman Clay says. With the potential of annexation, I don't think the county would have the interests of Shakopee in mind as much as our own guy. I think this would, you know, depending on how that job position and that person fit the role, I think this is vital to grow in our community.
All right, so we have 3 votes for economic development. Is that correct for everyone?
Can we
Okay.
do show of hands? That's a,
Show of hands.
okay.
All right, let's go to Recreation Facilities Maintenance Manager. This is position to help out at the community center for a higher level of service at the community center. Is there anyone opposed to this? overly excited about this? All right, Counselor Lehman?
I'm opposed. Actually, I think right now in this economy, it's a bad time to expand a bunch of bodies, period. I think it's just poor timing. And I don't think it's a matter of level of service. It's a nice thing to have. It's not a need. There's a lot of people just trying to get by with what's needed, you know. So no, I'm not in favor of that.
Okay. Is there, Counselor Sherman?
I'm not in favor of it either. It's another head count, and if we don't have the tax base to support it, we need to wait until our city grows further. We need to focus more on rooftops and getting more taxpayers if we're gonna expand to that degree with staff.
Right. I am also not in favor of this position being hired right now. So that's 3 negatives. What do you guys, Counselor Clay is negative, Counselor Whiting?
I'm outvoted.
You can be positive for it, it's okay.
I'm on the fence on it. I think there's a need there to maintain the community center, and we want to make that look, but to hire a position for it, I think we could do better at managing it, I think.
All right,
with
so,
the staff we have.
all right, so show of hands who's in favor of this position? Seeing none, all right. That good, Julie?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to Human Resources Technician. This is for augmenting our staff and being able to get all the human resources things done that we need to. Counselor Lehman.
I have a question, I guess. What do we have for human resources right now?
Currently, we have
Chris?
the Assistant City Administrator, and we have a Payroll Benefits Coordinator. So this would be a third full-time position.
And number of personnel that are dealt with?
How many W-2s did you
city
issue?
City issued 393 W-2s in 2011. So that's
approximately
unique
100.
individuals employed here at any given time. In the summer, we're in the 260 to 280 range on a payroll. In the winter, we're down in the 190 to 200 range on a payroll.
Okay. Now, I don't know if this is proper to ask, Mayor, but can I ask the Counselor Sherman, who specializes in this field, for a comparative analysis number from?
No.
I can't.
I'm just kidding. Of course you can. She
I don't know if I would have the right information, because how I work in human resources is very different than the city, because I work for a large corporation that has a central support area that supports it's just a different structure, where this is more standalone, where my experience is in a corporate structure with different support mechanisms.
Well, I'll ask one last question then, Mayor. Is it safe to say that the assistant administrator's main function isn't HR, or is HR?
It would be more than half.
More than half, yeah.
currently or ideally?
Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
key.
that's the key question, I
I
guess.
think my job description is written that I should be spending about half of my time on human resources. I'm also responsible for overseeing your facilities management staff, IT staff, the communications coordinator, and the telecommunications coordinator. The reality is most weeks I spend closer to 75% of my time keeping the human resources workload under control. And my staff in those other areas are waiting 2-3 days for me to proofread a memo for them, or, you know, it pains me when they stick their head in my office and say, do you have a minute to tell them, no, I don't, so those functions don't get as much coordination and oversight as they necessarily would according to my job description, due to the workload in the human resources area.
One of the things that's unique about city government is that we have civil service, which is time-consuming. I mean, it assures us that we get probably the best when it comes to police, but it's very time-consuming. And if, as been talked, if we're going to be hiring firefighters, either part-time or full-time, that's also a significant amount of time investment.
Councilor Sherman?
So this is a place where in our earlier discussion, we talked about one of the ideas from staff being automating or reassigning front desk procedures at city halls in order to create a savings. This is where I would like to see if this is definitely a need and this is a position that we need, how do we do something such as that to create the trade-off on the money?
Are you talking about that in conjunction as well with the communication coordinator?
Well, I'm just saying
or
in one place or the other,
between those?
whatever the greatest need is.
If I can interject, and Chris and I have talked about this, the positions at the front desk have extremely different skill sets than an
Right.
HR person.
And I'm not saying move a person over, I'm saying the dollars. I'm not talking about the individuals.
Right.
Just the dollars and headcount.
The savings from going automated at the desk could be applied to the
Mhm.
position in human resources.
Right. But-
Or if we're adding this type of position, would we need to make it go automated, or could that position answer the phones when they call? I don't know what the call load is up here. Is it
It's heavy.
okay? So that no one would
And
be
then
successful. Okay.
who's ever sitting up here would have no privacy. Well, with HR, that would be a very,
That'd be a
very
problem.
dicey
Right.
situation.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilor Whiting.
Although this might be difficult to manage, would it be a position we could go half-time on?
Yes, I would say so. Any additional man-hours in the week would be better than what we have now and would get us further down the to-do list, of work to be accomplished. So,
Possibly next year, if it's being that much of a help, freeing you up to do other things, take the next step then at another time, maybe.
Julie hates this idea. Why?
Well, because when you go out and you interview for a half-time position, the applicant detail you're gonna receive is very different than a full-time position. And if you're looking to keep a position going more than 1 year, to me, you're penny wise, dollar foolish, whatever way you wanna call it. It's not bringing you the sources and the skills that you're really looking for.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm in favor of hiring this position.
It's not an area that I think we need to skimp at, but I would be willing, I would support that position, but I would also support finding the savings somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't understand what that means.
Well, it might mean what do they call it to the front desk?
Automate.
Automating the phone at the front desk.
So now you're in favor of getting rid of the front desk?
If I have to pay for this position, I am.
Well, let's put the reductions into that slot. 62 grand, that's almost there.
Yeah.
We have, you're right, between our gains and our reductions, we have added $62,000 to our budget, which covers
But we also added
that position.
86 for a economic development person too.
You're right. Well, I mean, it's not gonna cover everything.
Right.
But
Trying.
we're balancing here.
We're trying.
You're absolutely right. We are trying. And that's good. So we've got, all right, show of hands again, HR technician. Yes. Counselor Whiting, are you,
You got your 3.
well, that doesn't really work. You were in just a little bit ago. Are you still in?
We
I don't,
didn't decide if we were gonna offset it with the
Only
front
with
desk.
offsets, not a straight ad.
okay.
So is that what you're asking, a straight addition? adding
Let's
a
talk
position.
straight addition right now.
Yeah, I'm not supportive of that.
Yeah, I am not.
Okay. So what do you see to happen to get that, to offset that?
Well, we
Would you
either,
like to have another vote on the front? Would you like to have another vote on the janitorial position? What do you,
It would be both of those. If we did both of those, we could fund this position.
correct.
And I think that's a good trade-off.
all right, so
If
will
we did
one of
both.
you two,
If we did both what?
The custodian and automating the front desk.
Automating the telephone.
Custodian.
Going back to your guy.
Yes, there are the dollars.
I am not at this time in favor of automating the front desk.
Nor am I.
Well,
Still.
Go with your straight up then.
We're still waiting on Counselor Clay. You are in favor of not, or still not in favor of automating the front desk to offset the hires?
Still not.
Okay. So we have 3 positives for the HR technician and 2 negatives.
So I
Continue.
have a
Yep.
question,
Absolutely.
and maybe we do this at the end,
Mhm.
going through all these.
We're gonna run back through this stuff once we get to the end and look at the levy and make sure that everything
Okay,
just globally makes as much sense as it does myopically.
because if truly these positions are then getting on some kind of list, I would then hope that we would prioritize the final list to say HR technician or economic development specialist, which is more important. Just throwing that out there.
When we get to the end, when we're giving direction on the overall levy, we will absolutely have that question,
Okay.
that discussion. And if there is question on the overall levy amount, then we'll have to go back and reassess some
Right.
things.
Okay.
So we're there. All right, so HR is 67.6. All right, so now let's talk about natural resources technician. Councilor Lehman.
Most of our natural resources are covered under the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources or the Watershed District.
Okay. Councilor Sherman.
I'm a no for that
Yeah,
position.
I'm a no also.
Okay. I'm a yes for this position because I think that we are absolutely neglecting some things that we need to be getting done from an educational and actual physical standpoint within our city and getting things done, as well as natural resources taking up a ton of one of our higher paid positions as the Park and Rec Director's time, which is wasting, is beneath her pay grade. I think her spending that much time on natural resources is a waste of our money. And we should have someone more within that to take that position. Councilor Whiting?
Let me ask the halftime question again. Is this any, I mean, you're diminishing it, of course, as a value, but at least there's some value there. Is this something that would be able to go part-time? I guess Jamie's not here to ask. so
Unfortunately, she'd be the one to answer that question.
Just a thought to throw out there.
Bruce, and, you know, I was gonna say, both Bruce and Michael work with this when
Yeah.
they're dealing with the plans and the.
Okay.
College kids.
You may not be aware, perhaps you are, that the way it's handled is not just through Jamie, but it's also handled through me and our planning staff. Our building inspectors handle the erosion control and implementing the woodland management requirements on individual building permits. Bruce's staff does an awful lot in this area. And my view of part-time is that what will happen is those days when that individual is not there, either Bruce's staff or my staff is gonna have to deal with it, because if we're going to go for customer service, it's never, in my estimation, been good enough to say, John or Jill isn't here today, give them a call tomorrow. And I think this is true, and we are, of course, seeing an uptick in development, both on the commercial side and residential side. And those are the areas where we have issues related to not just things that are controlled by DNR, but things that are controlled in our statute. Woodland management, which is in the zoning chapter. Shoreland overlay. Floodplain management, also within the zoning chapter, chapter 11. Steep slopes regulations, also within the zoning chapter. Mining regulation, also within the zoning chapter. So those are a lot of areas that are within the zoning chapter under the control of the zoning administrator. And I think if you look at part-time, what we're gonna end up with is a mixture of that individual and the folks who are splitting those duties, dealing with it at the same time.
Thank you.
Councilor
Mr.
Whiting?
Mayor, I just wanted to ask that to make sure we're looking at all those options. I think this is an important position. Obviously, Mr. Leak mentioned how many people this affects down the road. current staff stress level, I think, is there, it's showing. I think we need to put this position in.
Councilor Lehman?
Michael Leake's development staff is at the same level it was when we were doing 1,000 plats per year. And we're currently doing how many this year?
1,000 building
Plats?
permits.
Building permits per year. I'm sorry, I said plats, I meant building permits. But at the peak of our growth, our staff is pretty close to where it was at that time.
And it's also at the same level it was before 169 opened in Shakopee. We're doing 2 to 3 residential plats currently that have either gone through the process or are in the process. The challenge will be, if you want to see additional development, how anxious you and the township are to see annexation of additional area, because as you know, a large part of the developed part of our community is now under the control of the city's friends and neighbors, the Shakopee Metawankenton. So if additional residential development is going to occur outside of the roughly 300-acre annexation area on Marystown Road, there's going to have to be additional annexation. But what we do today that is different from what we did then is we do have planning staff that assists with economic development. They assist with the transit operations as the requirements of the Met Council has become more stringent for reporting to them on a quarterly basis and then sharing the reports again when they lose them on a weekly basis. So there are...
Another meeting.
I'm sorry, have to introduce some humor here. But there are additional things that we do. You know, during the downturn of the last few years, I know the recession is over. People would always ask me, so what are you doing in the planning area? There's nothing to do. The answer is there's plenty to do. We're not running from plat to plat like we were in 1999 and 2003, where we created somewhere around 1,100 lots and issued 1,100 building permits per year. But we are at about a level above where we were before the opening of 169. And we're doing things that we weren't doing at that time as a staff. So I apologize for being defensive, but when you say, yes, we're at the same level as when we were going great guns, remember that was probably not the best level to be at to manage that kind of growth.
However,
And as well, Park and Rec had had 2.
Well, our building staff is down by 3, as I indicated, because of, remember, we've been cutting for a number of years. I believe it's 5 years that I've been asked to cut my budget. And so I've gone to my inspection and planning staff in each of the last years and said, don't know what's going to happen. One of those years, one of our younger people said, I'm not down with this, I'm going to go looking. And 2 of our staff were transferred to the fire department, which is fine. They're serving an important public function there. But our inspection staff is roughly where it was before 169 opened as well.
Councilor Lehman, what were you going to say?
well, if we're hiring an economic development specialist and your staff is doing that, that's freeing up something. Because now your staff won't be doing that.
I wish that that were true. I think there are 2 issues, and I apologize for being blunt with you. I still think you as a council need to decide what you expect that position to do. And I haven't heard that delineation from you. But I'll also let you know that part of what happens with economic development right now, and it happens here, is balancing the zoning aspects of those projects that come to the city against the economic development aspects. And guess what? Those aspects aren't going to go away. So we will be involved in economic development, whether it's on First Avenue or new businesses that locate within whatever new business park property you zone. So that involvement is not going to go away totally. But I still think you need to further explore and define what you're going to have that person do so that you know what the impact is. If it's First Avenue, as an example, there are going to be some zoning challenges for people who might be interested in developing or redeveloping part of that corridor. If it is a business, plats are involved, oftentimes CUPs are involved, so we're still going to be involved in the process. And the question is going to be how we can balance those interests. That zoning aspect is a regulatory authority of the city to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. How do we mesh that with the goal of bringing businesses, allowing businesses to expand? That happens even in those communities that have that position.
All right, we're gonna go back to natural resources technician, the topic of discussion right now. Councilor, do you have something, Councilor Lehman?
Nope.
Okay. My comment back to what you said earlier about that planning has the same amount of staff as it did before is that Park and Rec has 3 full-time positions down from where they were in 2007, 2008, whatever that is. And it has been delivering the same levels of service with a lot less people and a lot less things.
The difference is recreation, you choose to do that. Unlike the city's sewer, if it don't flush, you're kinda in trouble.
Okay. I appreciate your position on that, I will say. All right. So, Councilor Clay, natural resources technician, you are the only one that has not yet weighed in on such topic. We have 2 ayes and 2 nays.
Oh dear, the pressure.
How are you going to handle it?
Let's go with it. Yes.
Oh, I thought I was waiting for an answer there. Sorry. All right, so we have 3 positives. Just to affirm it for the camera, show of hands for hiring natural resource technician. Okay, we have 3.
Nothing on my sleeve.
All right, last one that we've got is communication coordinator to full-time. $35,000 with, I believe, the intent at this time is Lori's position would become full-time. Is that accurate?
We have a 25-hour-a-week communications coordinator now, and this would add 15 hours.
To her. Thoughts?
Not supportive
Got it.
of it.
Councilor Lehman.
Nope.
Councilor Clay, I won't make you the swing vote this time.
Nothing against Lori, by the way.
No,
absolutely.
not at all.
Like that.
No one would take it that way, and it's discussed. So, Councilor Clay, what do you think about this?
Oh, I think we've got to give up something here.
Okay, so that's a negative. All right. I was absolutely, obviously, in favor of this position because our residents are craving communication, and when we talk about outcry about fire department and things like that, to me, there is a significant outcry for people to want to know what is going on within our government and transparency and knowing what is happening. The only way.
We're on Facebook and Twitter.
No, we're not.
Yeah, we are.
No, we're only on Facebook.
I thought we were on Facebook. We're not on Facebook?
We're on Facebook, yeah. We're not on Twitter, though.
Oh, well, we're on Facebook.
Right. But that is not, but she is not able to engage with our residents by only being here a couple days a week with that. And by not doing this, I think we're missing out a significant opportunity to tell residents what we do and tell our story as a city so that people know what is happening, and because not everybody, it doesn't get read by the newspaper. I mean, it doesn't get reported in the newspaper.
You mean it
all the
doesn't get
different-
reported accurately by the newspaper?
Or that.
I'm not going to say that at all.
Let's not go there.
But what I am saying is that all the things that we do doesn't get communicated to our residents. So all the great things that we do, like with Public Works and Park and Rec and things like that, don't make it all the way to the actual end users. And I think that we'd have more people engaged with our city, more people doing things if we were actively pushing that, as well as using someone in this position as PR for telling our city's story outside the metro to engage more businesses and people for wanting to come back here. So,
Well, if it's
Filibuster.
communication with businesses, that's the economic development director or whatever we economic development specialist's job, or part of their job. We voted to discontinue the Hometown Messenger or incorporate it into, so we're limiting the physical avenues and postage requirements to get that communication out. So if we're doing that, why do we want to spend more money to create communication, or if we're not spending more money to disseminate that communication?
Because we need to be, in my opinion, where people consume their information. And on a day-to-day basis, the vast majority of Shakopee residents do not consume their information with a hometown messenger.
Chisel on a rock.
Right. If we were more digital and were able to send out more emails, and not just more emails, but be able to get more people on our email list and get more people and utilize the tools and technologies that are out there, we can, when we'll just use the proverbial soccer mom is waiting for kids to get done with practice, and she goes on her phone and looks at Facebook, and there's something from the city on there consistently, or on Twitter, then that, I think, will get the communication message out there significantly more efficiently and effectively than the Hometown Messenger ever could, is my opinion. Councilor Whiting?
Well, I see the value. I mean, definitely there. Like Councilman Clay said, something has to give, but there's definitely a value. I see that as an important function, and definitely would stop a lot of the miscommunication.
Got it. All right. So, show of hands in support of community coordinator. Communications coordinator. Thank you. 2 for and 3 against. That one does not get in the budget. All right. So we have. Let me just make sure.
4 positions that you need to rank. Economic Development Specialist, HR Technician, Natural Resources Technician, Crime Prevention Specialist.
Okay, and that is.
What your records show?
Yep, that's where I'm at.
The 4. Okay.
Plus, we are also putting in the preliminary levy, the 6 paid on call firefighters and 4 full-time firefighters, with the intention of having discussions about that for the final levy.
Yep.
That is not necessarily in the final levy. All right, so what's that total, Julie?
Well, at this point, do you want to keep these 4 primary positions we talked about? Do you want to keep all 4 of them in the preliminary levy or not?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that a joint decision or just mayor's decision?
We just
That's what I'm
That's
asking.
what we
Just talk
discussed the
about
whole
everything
time.
we talked about tonight.
All right. So we're
We
keeping
can
the
read-
4.
I-
Well,
I-
it's actually more than 4 though. It's
Well, it's plus the paid on calls.
okay.
Right.
All right.
Which will be a discussion to be had
It's
at
a
another
different
night.
line item.
And the 4 full-time firefighters.
Right.
Right.
So it's 8.
Correct.
Preliminarily.
Plus 6.
Right. We're up to 14 in the preliminary.
So if you just take the 4 positions
10
we
of
just
those.
talked about,
Yes.
for 2013, not using the 2014 numbers, the 2013 numbers is 259,493.
Okay. All right. So with the 259,493, so we are up about 190,000 budget so far.
That's including the debt service levy?
No.
Not yet. That is a brilliant segue. Let's talk about that. So Julie, where we're at right now with the 2012 to 2013 levy.
The 2012 levy, you have $120,000 in the levy for the fire budget. I'm sorry, for the fire building debt levy.
Right.
If you wish to increase the levy by adding any of the debt service that were listed on the sheet provided to you, those would be an increase in a levy. The option is, do not deviate from what you've done in the past and use your fund balance.
Can you tell me where the 2013 levy is with the changes we've made so far? Don't keep the debt the same from 2012 to 2013, the EDA.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Not at
Sorry.
the moment. I'm gonna have to do some.
Bless you.
Because we've got a couple of things that we haven't gotten into as far as the transfers and those pieces.
All right, so the EDA transfers is easier to tackle right now, correct?
Well, can we finish up the personnel? That would really make
Personnel, what are we missing?
the initiatives with the 4 positions. Is there, at this point, do you want to rank them for inclusion, or do you want all 4 put in the preliminary budget?
All 4 are in the preliminary budget, as voted on by council members on each position.
Okay. Okay.
Is that, am I okay.
But 8 full-time, 6 part-time firefighters.
The 6 part-time and 4 full-time firefighters.
You want all 4 of those, or both of those in there.
Right, and that $165,000 will be a discussion to be had at a different council meeting based on what we as a council want to do with the fire future, fire department's future.
Okay, because if you add those in, then your personnel costs with all 4 is $424,493. Okay? If you bring all of those positions, those 4, and then the 2 groups of firefighters, you have $424,493.
Okay.
Okay? So roughly, if you were to add that alone to your budget, that's just shy of a 3% increase in the levy.
Okay.
Okay? Yep, so if you roll those in, you're gonna be just about at the 3%. The budget, and that's about a 440 something to get a 3%. So you're just slightly, 441, so you're just slightly over 3%.
Okay.
Okay?
Does that take out the $62,000 or no?
Take out the 62,000.
From the additional revenue and the budget reductions?
It does not. I'm just going right now with the details on here, yeah.
Understand.
So if you were to, I guess the question I have for the council is from the debt service. We did this last year, we walked forward and said we were going to add 2 pieces of the debt to the levy. We added it into the preliminary, and then come time for the final levy, we took them out. So my question is there a commitment to funding the debt service at this stage? Do you want to hold another year? Do you want to add another piece into the debt service, realizing that any addition to the debt service will increase the levy?
All right, so let's talk about the fire referendum bond separately, and then we'll talk about the rest of the debt service. So the fire referendum bond, just to recap everybody, is $250,000 per year if it were fully funded with the fire referendum that was voted on by taxpayers. So that's $250,000 that the taxpayers intended to be using for paying for the Fire Station 1 is where we're at. And currently, of that $250,000, we are only levying 120 of that thousand.
Correct.
What do we as council think that we need to be doing? Julie has recommended bumping that up to 150 for that levy itself, and capturing the voter-approved money. But what do you all think?
And where are you seeing that 150? What page?
If you go on any of the,
The debt service.
go to,
I'm trying to figure out which one I want to pull up there.
just go to one of the,
Yeah, let me pop one of these up.
one of these. These don't have page numbers on them.
Yeah,
But-
if you just take a look
There you
at
go.
the details here. What we had talked about when we did the debt service discussion, right now, you have 120,000 in the 2012 levy. What we're saying is, if you wanna bring it up 30,000, bring it to 150. Again, just to incrementally start addressing, it's been reduced over the years per council direction to reduce the levies or maintain the levies. And what I'm asking is, do you wanna reverse this, or do you wanna maintain this? The voter-approved referendum.
And the shortage is coming from the general fund?
Everything you're dealing with here is gonna be use of fund balance or general fund transfer. Because there is no revenue source coming in to pay that levy. There's no assessments. There's nothing that's another funding source.
Councilor Clay.
There was, and is there still a, the deal where we can levy for debt service regardless of what the state legislature has to say about it, whereas in years past, they have from time to time set limits on,
Oh, is there a property tax levy limit?
yeah, but
There is none this year.
but if the legislature decided to do that again at some future date, they can't apply that to
They
debt
could,
levy.
but they cannot apply it to debt yet. Not yet.
And what would need to change for them to do that?
Legislative action and dealing with a lot of very angry bondholders who bought debt based on the promise that there would be levies to pay the debt service.
Gotcha.
Okay? That
Councilor Lehman.
But they did at one point, put a levy limit on, but they did exclude debt.
Correct, that's what we're saying. Right now, debt service is not
Right.
part of the levy limit. So I guess our simple question tonight is, I know historically, less and less of the debt service has been levied, and we're just saying, is that a step you want to continue, or do you want to address this and possibly increase the levy for debt?
Councilor Lehman.
We're already increasing the levy by adding positions, so I would like to leave it at 120 and use the underspend.
What you're actually using is fund balance,
Yeah,
because
we're-
you
yeah.
cannot rely in the future on underspend.
Well, I
We have
understand,
shared
but
your
I'm-
budget back,
I
and
call
I
them the
would be
same
remiss
because
to
they go in
say
the
you're
same
going to
pot.
have underspend for this.
Call 'em
You
the
may
same.
not,
I call them the same because they go in the same pot eventually.
right.
We're killing the working man already, so.
Councilor Sherman.
Because it is a voter-approved referendum, I could support it, but I can't with our previous decisions.
Okay.
So leaving it at 120 based on the previous decisions.
All right, and based, just so everyone is aware, based on the previous decisions that we have made with, we're currently at a 3%, less than a 3% increase over the 2012 levy, as well as if we were to increase this fire levy by $30,000, if we increase it to $150,000, the impact on the taxpayers, let's see, it would be 63% of the taxpayers with this, where we're at right now, would actually see a decrease in their taxes in 2013. So what people pay, 63% of them would pay less actual dollars out of their pocket, which I think is the most important part of it, of what we're doing. 28% of taxpayers would see a $21 increase over the entire year. And then the remaining 7% would see a $70 increase, and then 1% above that to get to 100% would see a $94 increase for the entire year, and a $118 increase for the entire year. So what we're talking about with these dollars and getting, I believe where we're at so far, a lot of good for our community, does not have a significant. Increasing taxes is always something that cannot be taken lightly. I don't want to say that whatsoever. But where we're at right now is not a huge and what I think is a burdensome increase for the individual taxpayer. I just wanted to let everybody know where we're at on the scale of things right now. Am I correct in saying that, Julie? Is what I said?
That's correct, because what we're dealing with is we're dealing with initial information that we get from the county, and there are details that will follow. And in addressing a question you had, Mr. Lehman, is it possible to get commercial industrial values? And after about an hour-and-a-half conversation this week with the county, the numbers that they could generate are of such a difficult algorithm that, because there are state factors, fiscal disparity factors, there are classification numbers, it was extremely difficult, and they are unable to come up with estimates for commercial industrial. We do know across the board in Shakopee that there is more reduction in residential than there is commercial industrial, but there is less impact to commercial industrial than what had originally been thought. That's about as clear as I can give you on that update, and we'll continue to work on that. But I guess our incremental question tonight is, do you wish to maintain the debt service levy as you have in the past, where you tap into fund balance, or do you wish to add to the levy to start initiating payments into the fund balance or into the debt service system?
Councilor Whiting.
Well, to me, and I'm kind of boiling it down into a generic portion, is right now we're paying minimum payment on our credit card bill. And you need, first of all, the fire fund, it's voter approved. We need to start moving in the direction of paying that at the rate, at more of a rate than we are. So I'd be in support of that. The other funds, I think we need to move in that direction. I don't know that we need to jump there all tonight, though. I think we need to start building them up and levying for those funds.
So are you saying go with 150 that has been?
I would say 150 on that portion, yeah.
All right, between all of them, Julie has recommended, Ms. Linehan has recommended to get us into the future of where we need to be with debt service. Would love to see it at $250,000 to be paying off what between those, especially the 2004B and 2006A. But I'm comfortable of making a dent in it right now. And increasing that referendum levy to 150. Councilor Clay, you were gonna say something earlier and I interrupted.
I forgot
Okay.
what it was.
All right. So where would you like to see debt service go, Councilor Clay?
I'd like to say it'd go away, but
Well, I know. That would be great.
It was in an era when you had interest earnings that were significant. It was when there were significant amounts of underspends in your budget, and it was feasible in those days to track and pay the debt out of those available funds. You are going to be more and more limited with that option, and I do not want to extend to you the perception that you can continue to go out multiple years with no debt service levy. It's not an easy decision to go and increase a levy for debt you have issued, but it is debt you have issued, and you have debt service payments. So you need to make, I think, a very clear statement. Are you going to roll down and tap into the fund balance, or do you go in and pay with a debt service levy?
I have a question.
Councilor Lehman.
Where did the fund balance come from?
Fund balance is built up over many, many years where you have your revenues come in, add to it, your expenditures go out, take away from it. You end up with that either growing or declining. Right now in your general fund, you have about 9.2 million in fund balance, okay? We typically keep fund balance at about 43, 45% of annual expenditures. Your annual general fund expenditures with transfers is about 20 million. You're right in that range. Now you can reduce your fund balance, but I think that needs to be a conscious decision on your point, and being aware that these debt service payments are going to come up every single year. They're not going away.
Councilor Lehman.
The problem that I have, and I've stated this over many years, is that you accumulate tax dollars by, you get the money up front, you don't use it all, and when you have it left over, what do you do with it?
It's maintained in your funds for multiple reasons. One is to provide you with those months of costs that you've got to be able to pay for. But more importantly, when we do things such as issue debt or refund debt, the position that you have for your fund balance is very critical to maintaining your bond rating, to being an indicator of the health of the city, of being able to track forward with situations if there was an incident or a situation where you had urgent natural needs. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why you have a fund balance.
Right.
There's also designated fund balance, like when we receive assessments, that goes to designated.
It's,
Try-
it's kinda like
Let me
in,
try this in a different way.
How about we let Counselor Clay?
If
Just
we
real quick.
if we budget
Councilor Lehman.
$80,000 for something,
let 'em go.
Okay.
and we only spend 60, you have 20 left over.
Right, goes to fund balance,
Correct.
correct,
Okay. We've built up this fund balance over the years
right,
of the taxpayers' money.
right.
And now we're gonna continue to sit on that money, and we're gonna raise taxes to get more money to pay off this
Now,
debt.
what you have is a fund balance position based on what is the auditor's recommendation for a sufficient fund balance. It's not like you're carrying excesses. It's not like you're filling up the coffers with unspent money.
Well, and we do have some extra tax dollars,
Mhm.
because we didn't spend them all, because our departments are pretty frugal.
Mhm.
So,
But as you remember, when I came in last March, I also brought in a series of transfers because of those underspends to put dollars towards some very critical needs, such as your capital funds, your IT, some of the other projects that were somewhat underfunded. So when you have those, it does give you that ability to prepare and plan a little.
So what we'll be able to do is that we will set our preliminary levy now
Mhm.
as to what very worst case scenario cash position for what we as a council want to accomplish. And then once we get to November, December, and have a much better handle on exactly where we're going to be at
Right.
with the end of the year, if there is fund balance there that we as a council decide to utilize,
Right.
we can use that, what she said earlier was $800,000, if we so choose, as a substitute of increasing the levy.
or you can shore up your
Or we
your
can-
overlay
we can do-
project, or
right.
you can do this, that, or the other.
Or we
thing.
can leave it because we think it's a good idea to have that money in the fund balance. I mean, we'll have the opportunity to utilize that source once we get to further toward the end of the year. Am I correct in what I'm
Correct.
saying, Julie? Okay.
Right.
So back to the question where we're at.
What we need is a decision on, if you could just give us a number, because what I have to prepare for next Tuesday, that you will accept, is a cancellation of the debt service levies. Whatever levies you are not going to actually levy for the full amount of the debt service payment, I prepare a resolution that signifies the council's authorized cancellation of the levies. And that's what this piece does.
'Kay.
So we'll need a determination of what that amount should be.
So
And
are
if it's for
we-
all the levies, except the fire, so be it.
So are we wanting to leave this at the 150, at the 120, where it's currently at? Do we want to increase it to 150? Do we want to increase it to 250? Where are we in handling debt service as what we need to do? Councilor Clay?
If we did 150, and then looking at the other stuff we've put into the budget tonight, I'm guessing that gets us to about, what, 4.6%?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is gonna be contingent on your fire decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's, yeah.
Yeah, because that's one of the bigger tickets in there, yeah. I'd say you'd be around 4.5.
Yeah,
Okay.
And the numbers from the county.
$150,000 towards debt service because we've lost our other avenues to fund these debts. It seems reasonable for the first year to at least, get that ball rolling. I always thought of the general fund, when we're talking about the general fund here, is if it was your own checking account for your home, but instead of getting paid every 2 weeks, you get paid only two times a year. You're gonna have big balances in that checkbook from, throughout the year. And if you also have to have, your security, safety net in there too, in case a, storm comes and blows the roof off your garage or whatever, you've got unexpected things come up. Like, if Shakopee had a tornado come through, we could buzz through quite a few, quite a big portion of that fund balance just in initial emergency response expenses before insurance and stuff could help us recover some of that. But anyway,
Well, and you hit his point. If you're working with FEMA, you need to work on a reimbursement-based process. You don't get paid till you provide proof of purchase. It's all reimbursement funded. That's where cities that bring their fund balance down are at real risk.
And that's why auditors always point that out, and, you know, if your fund balance is too low, you risk your credit rating.
That's right.
But we're currently nowhere near being too low,
No.
correct?
Our
Okay.
credit
We've
rating
maintained.
is
40 to
approximately
45%
Mayor,
is where
Did,
we're
Yeah,
didn't
Councilor
we,
Whiting.
and Julie, I should address this to you and the mayor, but didn't our bond rating slip a little because we weren't funding
No.
some of this, or wasn't that part of it?
There was discussion on a couple of areas of how you deal with your budgeting, how you allow for budgeting for transfers, how much debt you're actually levying and yet paying.
That
Those
part
are
of
all
it's the
factors
neat,
when they do a bond rating.
Our bond rating has just improved recently.
But that was a question that was brought
That
up.
was based on an overall improvement across the country. There was no bond rating based on actions of the city.
Our bond rating since I've been here has only improved.
But the audit did nick us for not paying this off.
They do all the time,
Right.
every year.
So are we comfortable with $150,000?
Okay, we'll proceed with that.
Show of hands, okay? Moving that up to $150,000.
Got it.
So adding $30,000 for over 2012. All right. Next thing we need to decide is capital project funds. There's currently $500,000 in capital project funds in here, and that is, Julie, you want to talk about that, or do you
Sure.
want me to go for it?
No, we can walk through that. Again, I think you've seen this several times throughout the year, and what we're dealing with is this transfer to the fund. As you've heard when Mr. Wyatt and Mr. Loney had discussed the capital improvement fund, you don't have a dedicated source of funding for your capital improvement. It's been very hit or miss. If you have excess at year end, underspends go into that. It's a recommendation of the staff that you start committing an amount, of which we're presenting $500,000, that is an actual planned transfer each year from the general fund to the CIF, to start allowing for those known planned infrastructure costs that are going to go into the CIF.
All right. Are we including this in our budget?
It's already in the
if-
budget, isn't it?
This has not been placed in any formal budgeting before. What we show it in here is if you go to other financing uses, the 500,000, this is the first time you've put this in your budget. So it's a transfer from the general fund in, but yes, it's loaded in. If you look at the numbers, you've got your transfers in and your revenues of $20,655,000. When you take your expenditures, $20,185,000, and bring in the $650,000, that's where you're just slightly short of revenues and transfers less expenditures and transfers.
And this isn't something that affects the levy, this is just transfers between two different funds within the city.
Right.
The levy dollars going into the capital improvement, correct?
And what we're saying, levy dollars don't go to the capital improvement
Okay.
fund.
Yeah.
That's never,
Where's the 500 coming from?
the 500 is part of your general fund expenditures plus transfers.
Okay.
Julie,
You've never historically budgeted for capital improvement, okay? This is what we talked about last year, and we talked about a levy. That didn't go anywhere either. We're saying, how about if you transfer 500,000 from the general fund that you collect as part of your general fund levy and your other revenues, and bring it over to the CIF?
Okay, from which year's levy are we transferring these funds from?
2013,
So we're gonna levy $500,000 for capital improvement.
right. It's part of the levy.
I don't know what I said, I think.
Yeah, so it's $500,000 added to, from 2012 to 2013, $500,000 added to the levy in order to pay for the projects that we haven't historically levied for. We've gotten the money through the state and through other fund balance and
Yeah. It's dedicating the
Overlay
resources,
bubble that we're anticipating.
the revenues coming in, and making sure that it's a transfer to that fund at year end to allow for.
Did the 4.6%, I'm sorry, I'll raise my hand.
go for it.
Did the 4.6% increase that Councilor Clay was talking about include that already?
Right, because what you've got is if you bring that 2185 and add 650 to it, what you're gonna add is roughly 800 versus 2655, so you're still gonna have a slight fund deficit. And that's where you're gonna be looking at, okay, do you use fund balance, what do you do? But as we talked about with the CIF and we talked about with Mr. Loney and Mr. Wyant, that's the minimum you're gonna need in this 2013 CIF to get those projects undertaken, especially the ones that have come forward to council.
There are projects like Van Buren Street,
Mhm.
such as that.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Lehman.
Marion, I'd still like to see that the 5-year plan for that overlay bubble problem to be more nailed down to a dollar amount instead of having so many peaks and valleys in it.
And I think
That-
Bruce and Jeff have addressed that,
Yep.
that
It is.
No, the
That's
la-
exactly what
The last
that's
time
what
we-
this does.
Well, that dollar amount is allocated for it, but the project cost is,
But since it's a standalone fund, if you
Fund,
spend
right.
more one year and less in another, it still allocates out big
Right.
big picture.
but I think it would be easier to have it, try to get it more even
All right. So
on the project cost side.
are we comfortable leaving this 500,000 in here? Because this pays for roads. Do we need to? Because the 500,000 is in what you've already said, the 4.6 increase. Correct? Is that what you're saying?
Right, because again, this is the first year you've done this, so if we, as we roll the final numbers out, there may be some requirement of a small use of fund balance, but it's the number that, as we've talked with this budget, we've gotta have that to get these road projects going.
All right. So hands for leaving $500,000 in. All right. We've got
Okay.
3. All right, and then last piece we need to tackle this evening is EDA.
This was
And-
the 150,000 that was discussed at the previous meeting for the facade program. Council approved that, I believe, 5-0,
Believe so.
and that required the availability of $150,000. This is the funding to make that program happen.
Okay.
Yep.
Any
Is
problems with
this
that?
a program that you want to leave in for this year's budget?
So is that 150 plus 80? or
Yes,
is that,
because your 80 is for the tax abatement levy.
okay.
And that's part of the EDA program also. Okay? So this
Right.
is with that. So is that something you want left in the preliminary levy also?
All right. Show of hands.
Okay?
Unanimous. Whoa. All right, Councilor Lehman.
Now, Ms. Lanahan, the 500,000 that's being levied for the capital improvement fund, we have the option to remove that and put 800,000 in CIF allocated for roads if we want to, if we have that money at the end of the year.
That's correct.
Right.
Because as you recall, at year-end 2011, we did bring forward a substantial amount to help them fund this fund that had lost some funds prior from another fund transfer.
All right, are there any decisions that we need to make tonight that I have missed, Ms. Lenahan?
Did you wish to rank any of the positions?
No.
Okay?
Wish to what?
Rank any of the positions.
Right now, everything as discussed previously
Right.
is going to be in your preliminary budget.
Yes. Everything that we have voted on is because, have we ended up around 4.6, Julie? Is that?
That's what I'm gonna run. The one question I do have, and this
Okay.
is where I think there was some concern. When we
Okay.
go into the personnel questions on expenditure reductions, there was discussion on changing the custodian, the front desk, those type of issues, the 69,000 under items 1 and 2.
Right?
Have those been maintained in this budget
Yes.
or taken out based on the additions of the personnel?
The 49, we decided to leave, that was in the budget. Continue, so number 2 stays in the budget, and number 1 stays in the budget, correct? As well.
the custodian?
Correct.
Okay, I just
That
wanna be sure
20,000
that
there.
was the one. Was there any other staff
Yep.
questions? Was there?
We are set. No, we only did the fire debt.
Just fire, we're gonna do, we'll pull the fund balance for all the other remaining 1 point some million.
Is that,
Was
how
there?
smart is that? Is that, just make sure we understand what we're doing with that, please.
I'm saying, I think it comes down to the fundamental philosophy. Do you wish to increase taxes to pay for what you've got in your budget, or do you wish to rely on fund balance? And right now, you're relying on fund balance. Are these debts that are gonna go away? No. You can sustain it for 2013, it's like I said last year. I'm not saying you're gonna be able to sustain this for every year. And I would argue that when you have a policy of this degree, I would be extremely hesitant to recommend that this city issue any more debt. Because if you are unwilling to levy and raise a levy for the debt, the costs associated with debt issuance and interest and all the costs that come with it, you're not recovering.
So if we were at 250, where would that put us for levy increase, you know?
I'm not off
Sorry.
the top of my head.
Oh, come
I
on,
wish I
Julie, you
could.
got this all figured
No,
out.
not at 10
All
at
right.
night. I can't.
She's really
I'm
tough.
old.
I'm glad she's not my mom.
So, is that something that we as council wish to discuss further? Adding an extra $100,000 to continue to pay off our debt, which would make Julie happier? Councilor Lehman?
All I can say is we can't afford to get out of debt. We're too busy hiring new people.
So let's put a priority. Do you want to pay off debt?
If we don't hire people, we could.
All right, well, let's take it individually. Would you vote yes to paying off the debt?
I'll vote yes to not hiring so many people in a downed economy.
Okay? And you
I agree
second
with that. Yes, I think it's, if you look at your personal finances, if you have debt, you shouldn't go out and pay cash to remodel your kitchen
Mhm.
when you've got debt to pay off. It doesn't compute for me.
All right, so from down there.
Always debt to pay off.
Do we wish to pay it off faster than we've decided tonight?
No. Maybe next year.
I think we add to it, just move in that direction.
Okay,
And
because
we
I
may have
wouldn't,
to add faster.
I'm out to the edge of my comfort level already.
okay,
Okay.
there we go.
Well, we will bring this back, and there will be resolutions next week. The first one will be basically a resolution of the preliminary budget, a resolution of the preliminary levies, and a debt cancellation levy. So those will be the 3 resolutions that you'll see on September 4th. At that point, it's a preliminary, it's filed with the county. Then the final levy, final budget, final debt goes to the council in December and then certified to the county after that's approved.
Okay.
You cannot increase your levy after the 15th of September, but you can decrease it.
So
Got
if
it.
we use fund balance to pay something off, like the 500 and shift over, then we would reduce it by that. but we
Reduce the
can't-
levy.
But we
Yep.
can't increase it.
Right, as well as if we, just depending on what we decide to do with fire department, that would
potentially
could decrease the levy if we decide, because I can't imagine us doing all 10 of those positions, but it's in there as a possibility now, so that we can always pull that $165,000 back to wherever it needs to be. But, so the understanding the fund balance at the end of the year, as well as the decision to be made on the fire department, the rest of the budget, are we, how do I want to say this? Is this the final budget, intended to be the final budget that we will end up with? I know the 2 to my right will not agree.
We'll revise as we work through some of these issues and
Right.
questions on revenues. We'll definitely bring those pieces in.
Absolutely, but I'm talking about what we are committing to tonight for personnel especially, and also projects and cuts. Are those solid through the December and final levy? And I'm mostly looking to that end.
Well, I would,
Because,
I mean,
go.
I would call out that Mr. Leak question the economic development specialist and the role of that individual. So that seems that that is in question and would need to be worked out before a dollar commitment would be made as to what the role.
Our fire personnel still need to be worked out.
Yep.
And that's what I just said.
So, well, you said are the personnel positions finalized?
Other than final.
And
I said other than fire,
I
so.
don't think it's finalized yet.
Yeah,
I'm just mostly,
I reject the question because
Okay.
what we're setting tonight is the preliminary budget, and you're asking if the preliminary budget is the final budget. No, the final budget's in December.
I know, but what I'm trying to do is give staff direction that this is pretty much where we're gonna be. And we can think in terms of, this is pretty much where we're gonna be over the next
Yeah,
4 months without some significant changes with this, so that we're,
well, define significant.
deciding to cut one of the positions we've talked about hiring tonight would be significant, I believe, or.
Just one?
Yeah, I think that would be, giving us giving the direction tonight is not 100% that this is in, but that would be a significant change, I think. So, is there anything else you need from us?
I believe, does.
Anyone in the audience have questions? All
think
right,
we're
I'll
good.
entertain a motion to adjourn to September 4th at 7 p.m.
So moved.
Counselor Sherman, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Clay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passed unanimously. We are adjourned at 10:05. Good work, everybody. It was a lot of